as I practiced the new songs on while the fake Victor wasn't on. Masquinada is one of them, a bossa nova that's pretty famous. I'm going to be doing Nocturnus Opus number 7, which is a classical piece on soprano. One of the songs from my record called Manolo, it's a ballad. And the other one is Smiles and Miles to Go by Larry Carlton.
All right, still no tuba concerto yet, huh?
No, I could do it on the Barry sax. That would be kind of interesting.
Is there a lot of tuba concerti out there?
There's some, for sure.
I just made that up. Is that the plural of concerto? I have no idea. I probably
when's the next sax jam?
Thinking I'm an idiot, and I am.
Next Sunday, 29th is the next
Thanksgiving weekend. Okay. In
the
US.
It is Thanksgiving weekend, yeah.
Well, then you should do Turkey in the Straw, your own arrangement.
Hey, Alex, Discord link wasn't put out earlier. Do you want me to put one into Makana?
Yeah, I'll get it in a little bit later. We'll run a late cord link. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are tuning into YouTube and you see a little link down below, you can join us here in Zoom. If you're here in Zoom and you're trying to figure out how do all these people end up in this panel? Well, they got here early. We start sometime before 6 o'clock. No promises, but by 6 o'clock, we're chit-chatting away. I think today 5:50. We kind of just keep on seeing how early the conversation can go. But by 6 o'clock, we're chit-chatting. You don't have to show up that early, but you do have to be here by 6:40 Pacific Standard Time. We do our mic checks between 6:40 and 6:43 once we start the mic checks, except for Saturday. We close the panel. So on Saturday, we will open the mics again at 7:55 for educators to come in to have part of that education conversation. So we'll kind of a changing of the guard, so to speak. So we'll be doing that at 7:55. The first hour is general Q&A. If you have a question about education, online education, e-learning, just put EDU : in your questions. And we'll save those for the second hour. Not a lot of questions today, so everyone needs to kind of pick up some questions here. Think about things that you're trying to figure out. This is a good day to do that. So if you have questions about media production or a virtual production, this is probably going to be a good day to ask it. The second hour on Sunday is just more of the first hour, so it's pretty much the same. Mondays are kind of a wild card. Tuesdays are audio, Wednesdays video, Thursdays kind of arts and culture, and Fridays are event production. Those are kind of what we cover right now. That's constantly changing, but that's where we're at right now. And if you want to share this, the key is not to use don't use your own link. A lot of times we have people who will send that out, and then more people show up as them. Use the link that I just put in there, and you can share it with whoever you'd like, whoever you think might enjoy this. Anyway, let's jump into the questions, Bill.
Okay, A. Mitchell's our frequent questioner here from Washington. So it has a pretty long one today. It might be noted that the new size counter in recent questions to limit what is posted in Add Note is kind of big and obscures the actual send button there. What do people feel about this new feature? Love it, live with it, or hate it? How does this affect how you see an online event ecosystem? And he has a note. Also, who hasn't tried the rerun of the On Deck feature yet? Love being able to see the queue in action now, or really just like it. Any other new feature that you're excited about, like me? Thanks again.
I have to admit, I didn't see the size counter. I know I've requested some size counters to know where those things are. Has anyone looked at it? That's a new feature, and I have been pretty busy, so I'll take a look at it. Go ahead, Courtney.
Is that only in the desktop version? Because I usually use the mobile version when I'm on a panel, so I can put it over the side. I don't see it in the mobile version.
Yeah, I don't see it either. So we'll have to take a look at that a little deeper. But yeah, it's constantly moving target. We're going to definitely be continuing to make a bunch of refinements to that process. We did decide to shorten questions because some of them were getting pretty long. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, in the mobile version, you have a little blue line on the bottom that's doing the count for you. So that might be the in lieu of. Yeah,
it's I mean, the main thing is that you want people to ask their questions and have comments, but you do need people to be concise. It just, especially with the questions, probably more than the comments, is that long questions are just hard to read. So it's it's one of the reasons that I actually like text-based questions is because it keeps people a little bit more concise. I work on a lot of events where they have people asking questions at microphones, and they talk for 6 minutes and then ask a 30-second question, and we're like, we could have just gotten to the 30-second question. So it is kind of creating a certain level of rigor. Anyway, but sometimes the questions for us are too short. We can't understand what they meant. So we're trying to kind of figure out that back and next question.
Moving on to Mickey from the panel and in the Philippines. Any thoughts on the new Thunderbolt 3 hub from OWC? This significantly changes things for some of my studio build outs, and he's got a link there to it.
Yeah, go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, it's going to be a great solution, especially for people who only have a Macs with 2 Thunderbolt ports.
Can you explain it a little, Victor, for everybody?
Yes, it's simply a one Thunderbolt in, and then it gives you 4 Thunderbolt or USB-C ports that you can literally use. So then now you're able to, like, for example, on the new Macs that only have 2, you can put one of these in and all of a sudden have 5 Thunderbolt ports available, or USB-C. So and the price point is great. It's $150. I pre-ordered it and should get it here soon. So it's just a different type of hub, and it's very small, very compact, which is great for travel.
This has been a huge issue for me. I mean, with our computer, just this constant trying to figure out what I can plug in and what I can't. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Bill.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. It has 1 Thunderbolt in coming from the host, coming from the computer, and 3 Thunderbolt 3 ports for the devices. But yeah, like with most of my build outs, like I have a Thunderbolt chassis that has PCI slots for DSPs and all that, and also multiple monitors. So like Thunderbolt connectors like run out really quick. So having this would be like a small game changer for myself.
Yeah, I was surprised it took so long. I'm sure that it was very hard because it's been, this whole time that I've had, I mean, one of my biggest complaints was I just couldn't get enough outputs that were actual Thunderbolt outputs. Go ahead, Bill, and then John.
Yeah, and I just have come to trust OWC in terms of their port extenders. I've gone through 4 or 5 others from other companies, and when I finally got my big Thunderbolt OWC dock, it really just has worked flawlessly. And that seems to be the word on the street about the Thunderbolt stuff. The only thing that I think is at all just something to be aware of, it's not a negative, is that I think this new dock, if I remember the specs correctly, only passes 60 watts of power. And so if you have a high draw item and you're trying to keep it charged, it'll help it not run out of juice, but it won't pass a full 100 watts. That's all. And
I have to admit that I still, and this may be a superstition, but I always plug the power straight into the computer. I won't plug power into a dock, any kind of dock, anywhere. Like I just, there were some early issues with some of the other docks that you put onto a computer that would blow the docks, that would blow your ports out. Yeah, so we learned pretty early on after 2 computers went down, and we figured out it was the actual dock. It's the one that slid onto the side of your, I can't think of what it was, but slid onto the side of your computer. If it got cockeyed and it was sending power through it, that was the end of your ports. So I'm religious about not I put my power goes straight into my computer, and then I use the other ports as needed. Go ahead, John, and then Jeffrey.
Hey, Mickey, is it Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4, or is there no real distinction between the two?
That's what I was going to talk about. This is for Thunderbolt 4. If you plug in a Thunderbolt 3, that you probably won't get the same performance. So if you have like a 2017 MacBook, it won't work. Newer Windows machines with Thunderbolt 4, this will work perfect, but you might be a little bit weary if you just have Thunderbolt 3.
You have a slightly different performance spectrum. I mean, the performance on the Thunderbolt 3 is still pretty high. So I think that, and it is compatible with both. Yeah, you may not get the same performance as Thunderbolt 4, but I think that for most of the devices that we're plugging into that, you not see any significant change in performance. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Victor.
Yeah, the copy on their website mentions, now you can do more effortlessly with your Apple M1 Mac, any Apple Intel Mac with Thunderbolt 3, or any Thunderbolt 4 PC. So I don't know exactly what that means, but it mentions Thunderbolt 3. So
yeah, it is backwards compatible now with the Intel Macs as well. They just clarified that. They first said it wasn't going to be, but now it absolutely is.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, so PC Thunderbolt worked a lot differently than Mac Thunderbolt, and there were a lot of security, believe it or not, and the Windows side, there was a lot of security issues or lockdowns before there were security lockdowns on your Mac, which was really interesting. But with Thunderbolt 4, they now have all the full power of Thunderbolt 3, which Mac has always had. So it's kind of hard and kind of convoluted on how it all works, but in the end of things, it's still the same speeds as Thunderbolt 3, but with just 1 or 2 extra instructions for Thunderbolt 4.
Thank you. Next question.
Moving on to Eric Hall's question from Mount Vernon, Washington. Any suggestions on how to make a weatherproof Ethernet cross-connect for an outdoor power over Ethernet webcam? Note the webcam has a hardwired Ethernet pigtail.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, typically for that we'll just get a weatherproof utility box with gaskets all around it, IP or whatever 67 rated, or sorry 67 rated as Stuart would say. But yeah, an outdoor utility box would be a solution, and you can stick other things in there as well, aside from the cable.
What was the rating you said? 6, 7?
Yeah, IP 67 for water and dust resistance.
That's great. Next question.
Guy Cochran of Seattle is in with the next one on the panel today. Is Guy? Yes, Guy's here today. Hi, Guy. Marketing is complaining that my iPad lidar USDZ file is too rough for use in their edit. Is renting a higher end camera the answer? I found that the Leica BLK 360 goes for $885 a week rental online.
So that seems like a pretty high number for a weekly rate for a BLK 360. But are you running it? Where are you looking at that, Guy?
I just Googled and found it. It's a RP something RPD. I'll put a link in the chat here.
That seems pretty high.
It's the first one that pops up.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Even with the BLK 360, you're not going to get super clean, pieces. Yeah. For video, that's probably still a little rough. So really, where you end up going is with scans, you often will scan it and then use that underlay in which you then use for you build models. Something like, especially a lot of the basic geometry there that you see, the walls and so on and so forth, we would typically just build in a 3D app. It could be Blender or 3D or Cinema 4D or other things like that. And then you kind of remap it. You don't usually use the raw scan very often for anything that you would put on air because it's always going to be, it's just not putting the polygons where it should. The only time you do that is if you're using organic. So here's where scanning and photogrammetry work really well, is organic things that don't have a lot of hard edges. If they have hard edges and flat, certainly tend not to go as well. Yeah, so that's the Leica BLK 360. And that's what I've used a fair bit for stuff, and it's really easy, but it will be better than your phone. It will not be perfect, and you probably won't get geometry that you would still put on. And the other thing is it will create an enormous amount of geometry. So you're gonna have to clean it up a little bit. It's not lidar. We're not at a point with lidar yet where we're, from a broadcast video perspective, we're gonna scan something and then throw it into a video. It's still rough in that sense. The edges will be rough. There'll still be some inaccuracies, occlusion issues. Occlusion issues are where the lidar doesn't see it, so it just kind of creates a straight line of geometry. It's like, oh, I think there's something over there. So I think that a lot of times, even when I do lidar, even for reference, I do the lidar, and then we clean it up, with actual 3D modeling tools. We don't usually use the raw data, by itself. Now it's really good for measuring because it's really accurate. So that measuring your room will be good. Using it as examples or throwing something up will be good. I think that you can't create the examples that you see that on Apple's site for USDZ with lidar. They're not going to be that good. They're going to be those were modeled in something. So they were either created in Modo or Cinema 4D or Maya or something like that. They're not, because you're defining it. It's just in the same way. It's kind of like, what can you whittle out of wood versus building something with a lathe, and a strong, that's what you want to kind of think about is lidar is kind of like a knife, just whittling something out. And when you start using real tools, you end up with real clean surfaces, and that's going to be a different, it's just a different look. So those are the things to think about. Now, I think that this is going to greatly improve when we start matching up lidar, and I've said this over and over again, with photogrammetry. So lidar, once we have the accuracy of lidar with the detail of photogrammetry, a lot of these models are going to get much, much better. Still, things like the room that you showed there has a lot of occlusions. There's a lot of things that are close together that are hard to see. Those are always going to be something you kind of go back and clean up. Go ahead, Courtney.
You just touched on my question at the end there. Is there any software or single program that combines the LiDAR scan with photogrammetry? So using the photogrammetry where you move the camera around, you can take care of the occlusion problems, and you can do point cloud reduction based on the photogrammetry. Do they all combine the two, or just?
No, they're not all of them, but reality capture and I believe reality capture and Metashape have tools to merge your photogrammetry and your lidar, but I don't know how well they work with the phone yet. They're really designed to do things like the BLK 360, something like that. I think that we're going to get to a point in the not too distant future where we are merging that together, where people are going to write apps and release apps that are doing that automatically. That are basically, as you're moving, they're grabbing photos, where at the distance that they need apart from those photos, figuring that out, and they'll be able to get that data from the lidar. They'll know how much overlap they have as they grab that data. But what they're going to be able to do is tag things in the photo that are, I know where this point is. Like, I know this point is exactly this far away. And you just haven't been able to do that as effectively with the current lidar that you will, because you can't take a lidar system. I mean, you can. There's handheld ones and so on and so forth. But the fact that you can do it on the phone now, and the market is so much bigger, the software development is going to increase, dramatically, because there's a much larger market for it. Like, if someone put what I'm talking about out for $50 each, it'd make millions, because people would, because it's, and so because there's so many people now that have it. What needs to happen is you have this lidar information that's grabbing that 3D information there, and then it starts tagging if it starts tagging 18 to 20 points within the photo that it takes. So as it takes it, it says, I know that these are exactly this far away. I have high confidence in these things. It will make those photos incredibly accurate. And the other thing is that I know what my lens is. I know all the bits and pieces about it, because it's not some random camera. It's my camera, or it's the iPhone. So when it starts tying those pieces together, the photos, all the shading and everything else, they can be incredibly, you can get the texture of the rock in geometry. It's incredible amount of data. Now, there's a lot of content that you'd have to, what we call decimate. Decimate is remove polygons that are not useful. So flat surfaces, you need a couple polygons to do a flat surface, not, millions. In the same, so you want to decimate it so that you have a lot of geometry where there's curves or corners, and not much geometry where there's flat surfaces. The other thing you want to do is take some of that data and convert it to normal maps. So you basically say, I'm going to get rid of the data that's there, but I'm going to replace it with a map that represents it in lighting. And so those are a bunch of things that have to, happen from these scans. And we're still, again, the apps, I always want to manage expectations that the apps are still only a little, not very old. And I have a feeling that we're going to see an incredible expansion of capabilities over the next 6 to 12 months. It's going to be, I believe it's going to be kind of magical, like what we're able to do. But I do think that you're going to be doing field reports, and kids are going to be doing their school reports and everything else. And it's going to be effortless for them to pick up my cup of coffee, go like this, and throw it into my Pages document or my Keynote document, and be rotated around, or send it to somebody. Or you can send these 3D models over messages to other iPhone users. And so even if they don't have the new lidar, they can do it with their older phones. So you can grab a model.
Can you drop USDZ files into Keynote right now?
Oh, in Keynote, no. I'm
okay.
I'm extrapolating where I think Apple's going to go. I don't know that, but I think that you have to. I don't see how you would not how you're building all these tools, not have them in a document, in the documents and pages and Keynote and everything else. I think that, I don't know when that's going to happen, maybe years from now, but I feel like it's pregnant. The idea is pregnant. like
Yeah,
you know,
I kept
you just
trying. I thought I heard you say it before, and so I was like, add image, add files.
no, it's not.
USDZ files were grayed out,
But-
and I'm like,
but-
I don't know how he's doing it.
if you look at where Apple's going, that USDZ is being supported in messages, in mail, on the desktop, on like in motion. Why not put it in everything? Why? So I don't know. I don't have any information other than why not? Why would you not do that? If you're Apple, and when that happens, it's really going to make PowerPoint look slow. And the problem for PowerPoint is, how do you support that? Now USDZ is an open format, so you theoretically could get it on the PC, but it would be painful. So anyway, it's an exciting time, for a lot of us who have been doing photogrammetry since the mid 90s. We know how hard it was, and so when you see it, and lidar and everything else, when you see it be on a phone, I play with it almost every day. I grab some new app and I just see how it's managing the geometry. It's exciting. Anyway, good question. Next question.
Moving on to A. Mitchell's out of Washington. For those attending the Final Cut Pro 10 Summit, how do you feel about the marathon after hours, happy hours, some lasting close to 7 hours? Do they work for you or not? What are the benefits and what are the drawbacks of having this sort of thing in an event? What have you loved? What have you hated? For those, attending. Note, for those not currently attending, please say, if you can, how you feel something like this fits into the larger events or can affect how online events might proceed in the future, or even if you would personally like this or not. Thanks.
Go ahead, Sky.
I've enjoyed it. It's very similar to this experience of being so close to somebody that's in Tokyo and other parts of the world, that having been to NAB dozens of times, it's the closest thing to reconnecting to humans. And so I've enjoyed getting to know other people in Montreal and different places. So, and again, thanks to Chris Fenwick and Bill.
I think that one of the things that, and part of the reason that we're starting to open office hours a little earlier is because I'm prepping, so I'm prepping on like what I have to do that, and what my schedule has to be like to open up earlier. But my intention is to, as soon as, literally the moment rooms are available in webinars, that we, the early hours are really more of I'm going to try to break things up into rooms where people can kind of come in and talk about whatever they want. People can walk around between the rooms and everything else, but a little bit more of a pre-show kind of thing. And, so then pull everybody back together when we get ready to go. So I'm very fascinated by that. I think that there is a social element that I think is important. That I was in the first PPW for NAB, and it was like a huge room of lots of people, and it was kind of overwhelming for me. So I didn't stay very long.
Jeff,
I think that, go ahead.
I know Jeff would like to talk to you. Goldbook.
Jeff Greenberg.
Greenberg,
yeah.
Yeah. I know he stated he would like to talk to you.
Yeah. So and we talked. I guess what was it? Anyway, so we talked. We had a long talk about it in January, and so, but that was before all this. So anyway, and a couple in the spring as well. So, but I think that finding ways for people to. I found it really fascinating when we did this whole little rooms thing experiment last week or 2 weeks ago, where suddenly I just saw everyone in all these amazing people in the attendees that never show up for the panel, but they were all there, and I was able to kind of wander around between rooms and say hi to them and everything else. So I do think there's a power to that. I plan to leverage, I think that we want to be able to find ways that we can do that. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, the same thing. I think this seems to me like the very beginning of a new cultural shift of people having to learn how to handle these things. I noticed, excuse me, in the big panel when at the Creative Summit, we had a lot of people, a couple of voices, and one could ask a really long comment or question and kind of dominate things for a lot of time, not out of anything other than just I'm trying to express myself, and it's going on, and you're wondering, well, is everybody in this big panel interested in this topic for this long? And then you get into breakout rooms.
We have that problem sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. Then the breakout rooms have been very different. And one of the strategies that I employed last night that I hadn't before. I would go into the one based on the tag that looked the most interesting to me. And so at first I thought, well, the tags are important because one of the first things that Jeff did in putting out rings, he had a loud room. And I thought, yeah, I'll go to the loud room. And just
Hey, I
that,
started that.
yeah, just that, loud. Okay, I'll go. That's right. You did. Or maybe I was thinking about that. But then later, my strategy was what room has no one in it? He had like 6 rooms there, and one had 0 attendees. I thought, I'm going to go to that room by myself and see who shows up. And the people that showed up, we had a fascinating conversation, and it was people I maybe wouldn't otherwise have met.
Well, and I think that was one of the things that, to your point, I think at a final cut, giving all the speakers in a lot of these their own rooms would be really interesting. Like, hey, I want to go talk to Bill. I want to go talk to Chris Fenwick. I want to go talk to, Steve Bays, whatever that is. Having all the speakers have their own rooms, and then people can just aggregate around and ask the questions that they want of those speakers. I think of whatever they talked about sometime that week before could be really, really useful. Go ahead, John Preto.
No, this has been around for a long time. You're absolutely right. We're encouraging our clients to do these social events we call it after hours, funny enough, ironically enough. But Blab and Justin TV and now Twitch are kind of the predecessors for this event. And COVID has just accelerated this activity now, because I've met, Guy, weren't you on Blab back in the day?
I
think that's where I met you
originally. Blogger TV, one of those. Yeah.
So
I jumped around.
I met more interesting people online than I have physically in my professional career over the 20 years, and sustained relationships online. People have a hard time understanding.
I think that when you look at even this this group that we have, I mean, on many days we're representing 4 or 5 continents of people that we would have never met. And I'm working with folks now that are in all these continents of people that that I wouldn't have met outside of this platform. And I think that and the Pixel Core was the same way. We had 2,000 people in 40 countries, and they were all working with each other, interacting with each other, and they'd look for ways to collect at times. And so I think that finding more ways, and I think that the Discord is a good important piece of that that puzzle. I think that there's a continuity that it creates between all these things that allows us to do that. And I think we could do more with all of these things, but I think that the breakouts I think are breakouts and letting people interact more fluidly, I think, is going to be important. Jeffrey.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I was one of the original Google Hangout groups that when Hangouts was in the beta phase, we would jump from room to room, and we'd go to one room, and Trey would be in one, and we'd go into another room, and I can't remember his name, but he'd be drawing characters of people. We'd go to another room, and Daria would be playing. And we have those connections, and we still have those connections today. And then when we finally met each other from virtual to most people from virtual to actual physical, there was already that bond there. So definitely.
I will say something that does help is when a lot of us are have a lot of people in this group have worked on their video and audio. When you do those rooms, I think part of why I like the one that we did. We worked on another event that broke into groups, and I watched it, and it was not the same experience because people here are very conscious of their video and audio. And when you go to other ones and there was loud banging and things and lots of virtual backgrounds and all the things that we have slowly worked our way out of were still there. And it is kind of like, I realize that that is going to be its own challenge, because when you go into these breakouts, people don't realize that like really having bad audio and video when you go into a breakout room is kind of like not showering for 3 weeks. It just really makes it not fun for anybody else in the room. So anyway, next question.
All right, moving on. That one's done, and here we go with Benjamin Atnipit of Bay Area in San Francisco. What are the most important places to put money into a simple green screen setup?
The screen makes a big difference. Although, I mean, what I would say is that for me, large light sources and screens, I've built green screens that are not very expensive. I mean, I think $200 or $300 that worked pretty well. But but it wasn't. I bought shop light fixtures and put green bulbs in them and put flags on them, and then just used paper to go down, the seamless green. And I was able to get really good green screen keys out of it. But it's green on green makes a big difference. Very flat surface behind you makes a big difference. I spend money on screens because I've had composite components, green screens for 25 years at this point. So I'm attached to those because you can pull them tight and spray them. So it just depends on how often you're going to use them. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and how you're going to move them.
Yeah, I totally agree on. I think that what you're using for a green screen, the color of the green that you've got into the room, and then the lighting are two very important things, because a lot of people miss out on, especially with the lighting, because they think one light is gonna capture them on the green screen, and then they get on their Twitches and they get on their YouTubes, and even I see problems, and I sit there and go, well, what kind of light can I do to fix that? And then I got too much lighting, and then I got not enough lighting, and then I keep going back and forth on
being able to key you and your green screen separately is like the key to the operation. And so you need 3 or 4 feet between the background, which is hard for a lot of the tools. People tell you, oh, you can put it right behind you. Okay, kind of, and we're talking about doing great green screens. We're not talking about, you can get away with a lot. Go ahead, Bill, and then Steven, and then Guy.
Yeah, I will say all the things I learned about doing green screen back when it was really, really hard to do green screen have served me well now. The technology has gotten better. I mean, it used to be if you didn't have Ultimatter, one of the big name things, and exactly the right thing, you couldn't pull a decent key, particularly edges. And they have put a lot of engineering into making it easier, but still the same basic mistakes: bad lighting, bad geometry of the shot, and a bad actual key color that's consistent and works. They'll never change.
Steven, and then Guy.
Base, screen, light. That's the 3 things, that order.
Yeah, Guy.
Yeah, as soon as you have that screen evenly lit, for Jeffrey, if you get too much light, negative fill is your friend. So big pieces of black, either duvetine or flags, can help block out that light and soak it back up so that you're not, overly bright on any side.
Courtney?
Well, get an ATEM Mini, $300 buy-in, and it has one of the better green screen keyers built into it, and learn how to use it. Take a course in it or find some online instructions in it. Because if you use that as your green screen keyer, you can clean up a lot of faux pas with a poorly lit screen or green fill or fringing or things like that. But you've got to know how to use the keyer efficiently, and that takes some time, but it only comes with that $300 switcher. So don't use the Zoom keyer instead.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that to think about with the green screen keyer in the ATEM is, if you're sitting in a scene like this, a little bit of gray in your key doesn't mean anything. No one's going to know. They have no reference. If you're doing a visual effects shot, this key has to be perfect, and it has to be perfectly clear, and there can be no grain. But one of the things when I was doing a lot of keys for this show, I had all kinds of gray values back here that just made the background just a little darker. Didn't matter, because and I did that specifically because I knew it didn't matter. And I knew that I would get more hair detail by not pressing down on the key harder. So by getting rid of those grays, I was going to also get rid of my edge detail. And so doing what I call a dirty key, we do that all the time when we have just people sitting in front of something where the camera's not moving. There's not other things. There's not something really bright. You can't do that when you have a CG window behind you, because it won't get the pure white. So there's things that you can't do it on, but if you're doing it behind a regular background, you can get away with a lot. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Alex, have you tested any of the software-based keyers versus the ATEM Mini, vMix, or Wirecast, or any of those?
Well, software keyers, you can definitely get in post. You can get better keys than you can in the ATEM, or vMix. I mean, the vMix keyer is okay. The ATEM,
but for live, I know that Wirecast added in Luminous keys, didn't they, Jeff?
Yeah, they added a whole bunch of alpha key options and luminous key and color key options as well.
I'll take a look at it. I haven't tested those. I think that it's not hard to pull good keys if you do good lighting. Good lighting and good separation. You can do it with anything. I mean, I can probably do it in a command line script.
The keyer in OBS is not great. I can tell you that.
Well, and there's no excuse for it, because literally the keyer that I can write to do it live on what I used to do with Conduit. But the keyer that I didn't write it. I just set it up. But it is the math is very simple. It is R plus B divided by 2, and you subtract that from G. Like that is that is it. That pulls the key. That's a straight linear key, and then there's an unspill operation that gets rid of the green. And I can't do the math off the top of my head, but it's a really simple set of math that basically that neutralizes the green. That's it. And if you have a well-lit key and a well-lit, it'll work all the time. And what I'm amazed at is that there's not a feature somewhere in most of these keyers that just does that thing. Just does the thing that we used to do, like when we would do just that simple operation, which we stole out of Steve Wright's book. I mean, Steve Wright just had the equation, and we just put the equation into a soft piece of software, and then we were done. And we took that out of a book that's now 20 years old, and we put it in. And I'm always amazed that we don't see keyers that just do the thing. And I've told them that. Like, I have meetings with them at maybe like, just do a straight, linear key. Just give me that option, because it's very low. And we've been doing that in real time on HD since 2008 on a laptop. Like, it's not hard to do. And then you get these, like Mimo Live is a good example of just a very complicated keyer that doesn't, it's almost impossible to get a good key out of. And you literally could just build some buttons that just did the thing and made it work. So it's, anyway, a rant. Next question.
Moving on to Jeff Keithley. Hi, Jeff. We haven't seen you in the panel in a long time. Out of Texas, with all the big brains in this room, why aren't the questions being fed into a lower third or sidebar graphic? I know a guy if you need help.
Because right now we're still kind of on a low cost solution of pushing this out of Zoom, to YouTube. And so we have chosen not to add more production detail. If we turn this into something where we start charging everybody or charge somebody or get sponsors or whatever that is, and I can have a staff of, a large production staff locally, then I may do that. But right now I've thought about it. I also, my belief, and I actually don't know this for sure, this is my belief, is that a large number of people here listen to it, not, like if they're attendees, they're listening to it and not necessarily having it in the forefront. So the lower third doesn't mean as much, in that area. Go ahead, Sky.
You said in your sentence, you said you would have your crew locally. Isn't this experience kind of blowing that up? I mean, Brian's in South Carolina.
We could experiment with it. I still am not that excited about. There's two things. One is that I'm not that excited about putting. I'm still not that excited about cloud-based production. Like, I just need to say, like, I'm not, like, we're still experimenting with it, but it's not something that I'm willing to like get up in the thing is that right now you have to always manage sustainability versus, features. And right now what we have is very sustainable. I can turn it on and I can make it work. I can turn it on from anywhere in the world. I can make it work. I'm in a hotel in LA right now. If I start adding features, then if I start adding pieces, you just have to, like, now I have to maintain it. Like, I created a Discord link that I put out every day. And people are asking me about the Discord link right before we start the show, because I created an expectation that which I still haven't put out today, but you'll have to live with it. So, but the point is that if I start at 6, everyone expects it at 6, and like at 6:02, I'm getting phone calls and texts and stuff like that, which is fine. It's good, because it usually means I forgot, or I haven't forgot very many times, but people have saved me in that area. So the issue is, I look at, like, we're doing this every day on no budget, so I have to kind of keep in mind that if I add things, then people will be like, what happened to the whole thing? And here's the thing, is that people will feel like something's wrong. Like, if I start building it into a huge production, now it's not that we will never do that. We may do that. On the other side of that is, I do know that I need to get into, like, building out all the edits and doing everything in AWS and, all that stuff. And I just haven't had time to do it, because I'm too busy doing things on site, and I'm super busy for months right now. Like, I'm booked into months doing that. So for me to spend time on that at the moment, I haven't. I'm letting all of you learn so that I can ask you questions when I finally figure it out. But right now I'm busy enough trying to figure out how to do LUTs and cameras and so on and so forth. Bill, and then Courtney, and then John.
Well, I had an experience just the other day. I wanted to watch one of the sessions, and so I was on my couch. And I thought, well, I'll just pull up my iPhone, and I was watching, and somebody was doing a screen share, and they were doing something in Final Cut, and they were working down in the lower left-hand thing, and then all of a sudden the question snipe came across it, and I was going, no, I need to see this. And your interface just doesn't have enough room for all of these overlays and things without messing up content. That drove me crazy.
I mean, I've leaned towards clean aperture video for a long time because I feel like I have an app that can tell you all those things. So my application can give you those. If you're watching, for instance, if you're in the chat, you will see what we're, if Bill keeps up with it, you will see the question as we ask it, that lower third, quote unquote, pops up in the chat. So that is where it's showing up already. In the desktop version, as we progress, you see that underneath the screen. So it's a lower third, it's an under third, because that's already showing up in the interface. So the only place you don't see it is in the video distribution. And I think that I'm going to end up fundamentally not burning most of the content into the video, because I'm going to assume that there's some kind of interactive component. And so where I'm kind of going more towards is that the text is going to show up in the app, and it's going to be dynamic, and I'm not going to have to burn it into the video. And so that video is kind of a clean aperture all the time, which is better for my moving on to the future. But also then I can conform it however, because like what happens if I decide I want to distribute this in 9:16 and 16:9, now I have to figure out where all my graphics go and everything else. And in this case, if I have the app do that, I can dynamically make that change. Courtney, and then John, and then Jeffrey. And we're going to move on because I've got a lot.
Yeah, Alex, you just hit most of the high points I was going to mention. Is the desktop version. I watch usually in the desktop version of Makana because you have the video, although it is delayed by about 40 to 50 seconds, or exactly how many seconds it's delayed. So interaction is in the chat room. It might be a little more difficult, but at least you have all that information on screen, and you can listen and you can watch, and it doesn't cover up important things that people are showing on the screen. So I heartily recommend that if you're going to watch, other than be on the panel.
Because to me, it'll be weird if you're in the Makana desktop, which is we're going to do a lot more with in the near future. It'd be weird to have the question come up as a lower third, and then the question show up in the under third. We're kind of doubling up information. So we are assuming that you're part of the distribution. Go ahead, John, and then Jeffrey.
Well, one other go
ahead, Courtney.
Side point is the only drawback to that is that only works for the live viewer. The people who are watching it later on YouTube don't have the benefit of seeing the questions, and if they were superimposed in the video, you'd see it. But I don't know if there's any way to incorporate
for now.
So you're working on it.
So where you really want to watch this is back in Makana. We're just not doing that yet. So you don't want to go to YouTube to watch the archives. You want to watch it in Makana, and then you want, just got to give you a little preview. You want all the questions to go down the side. And you just want to click on the question that you want to watch. And then you want to watch the video. So you don't, and let it, and just have it just keep on running. So that's that would be more useful. And then back to many points, then it would be, easily searchable and all kinds of other fun stuff. So we'll, there's things that be done there. Anyway, John, and then Jeffrey.
So you hit most of my points. We had the same challenge early on where to put information in along with the Zoom. And I think that Zaps might be the answer as well. If you could feed it into Zaps on the side and the meters and all that stuff as a dock that can slide in and out, I think that will work too.
Yeah, we're looking at Zaps pretty carefully. There's a ton that we think we can do with Zaps as we go forward, as far as building all kinds of sub pipelines and other things between users. Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was going to say that with Makana. So and since you've already said that it's going to happen, I'm not going to bring it. But the whole thing with YouTube is next week things could change, and then all of a sudden that API won't be able to sync up the chat and that. So it's tough. So that's why you have to do something kind of on your own, and that it's money, and this doesn't produce money. And as you said, so
It's
if
all-
somebody wants to go out and do that on their own and bring it in, and we'll
Again,
you know.
I would be careful. Even if someone offered it to me, I'd be careful about it because then it's an external dependency that I have to manage. So anyway. Those are the thought process. It's a great question, and what's funny is we do that kind of thing for everybody else's shows. We just don't do it for ours. So that's what I mean. I have a whole pipeline that builds shows that look much different than what we do here, but I'm trying to keep it in. The thing that I've been very conscious of, is managing inflation expectation inflation. Like as soon as I open a door to something that is possible. See, now I told you about Makana, so now everyone's going to expect it next week. So those are the you have to be very careful as you build this. It's part of what's worked, I think, about this. It's part of why we're not growing as fast as we could, which is I'm fine with. But it's also part of why it's sustainable, or it sustained itself, is that we're not suddenly doing 1,000 new things that confuse people and everything else. I think that was actually one of the big problems with Hangouts, or not Hangouts, but G+, is that I felt Google popped up and it was a breath of fresh air because it was so simple. And then they just added so much stuff to it. It was confusing every week. And I worked in it. It was my job every day to work in it. And it was just like, oh my gosh, this thing is just a beehive, and they suddenly added so many ideas all at one time that I didn't even like going back to G+. And it was so amazing when it first started because it was just clean conversations and community. And it was really, really, I was like, oh, this is going to be so much better than Facebook. And they ruined it. Anyway, next question. We're going to keep moving. We're going to start moving quicker because we are running out of time.
Okay. And part of this is probably just me pushing the buttons wrong or not pushing them at the right times because I'm trying to operate and then move over to performance, which is reading, and saying Nick Pavlinac said this out of Southeast Michigan. Has the panel seen Netflix new cell-shaded World War II animation series, The Liberator? And what did you think? I read the only way they could afford to make it was with the animation effect. How does that change the budget? I liked it.
Go ahead, Victor.
I tried to watch it. I couldn't hang with the animated look after 10 minutes. I'm like, I'm out. And it's like right down the alley for the kind of show I would normally love. If they just would have stuck to film, I would have been happy. So I didn't dig it.
Anyone else? I didn't see it. Okay, go ahead, Courtney.
I kind of agree with Victor. I kind of hate it when someone tries to put an artistic touch on documentary historical footage, because it makes it more of an art project than an instructional video, or informational video.
I mean, I wouldn't mind heads up, like in World War II footage or whatever, like heads up displays of like what all that meant and what that was, and identifying things and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think that I don't know. It looks like that Lord of the Rings that came out in the 80s is what it reminds me of.
Which was hand painted, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately. Next question.
Moving on to Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, and he asks, putting on an event in a week using PheedLoop, PHEED, so PheedLoop. My part is to feed edited lecture using Zoom by screen sharing, then bringing in a person for a live Q&A. Can this be done just in Zoom, or should I use vMix? And if so, which version? And it has a note, the only feedback so far in a test was low volume during video, but the level seems correct in Premiere Pro. This is for a university extension course.
I don't think that there's any reason why you couldn't. You're feeding it into Zoom. I don't understand the service. Like, I don't understand why you need it. Maybe I'm missing something. Does anyone understand PheedLoop? Yeah, I'm afraid we've been. I don't understand why you don't just play it into Zoom.
It's just an all-in-one thing with. It's just an all-in-one thing with support. That's basically it. You're paying for the support.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand. Like I as someone who does a lot of Zooms, just like I don't know why I wouldn't just do the whole thing Zoom. Like if I'm going to feed that into Zoom, I don't understand what the value proposition is of the product. I'm sure I'm just missing something, but I don't quite get it. But I don't get a lot of these. Like I don't get a lot of the event, or I mean, I will admit that I just don't understand a lot of the event management systems. I know people need these, but I don't. I don't understand. Now go ahead, Guy.
We never do it, but I wonder if we could do like an allow to talk with Vincent and get a little bit more on this one, because I feel like there's something there. I could help him, but I just don't know exactly what
Vincent,
he's
if you
trying
want
to
to,
get
if
at.
you want to raise your hand, we can either bring you in or just have you talk if you want. We're going to move on right now because we're running out of time. But bring that. We'll take a look at this. I just don't understand it on the surface. I don't quite get what it does, what it adds. But I don't understand what a lot of these add. Like I just feel like there's all this like. My thing is, I feel like we build all these little things up because event companies are trying to stay relevant, and event teams within companies are trying to stay relevant. So they build all this weird stuff of how it's going to be an experience. And if they just did a show every day or every week or whatever, and brought people in and talked to their customers, be really successful if they took that kind of money. But then they do these Zooms and they don't want to send anybody kits, and they don't want to spend any money on it. And then it's not very good. Let's find something better. The reason it's not better is because it's not because it's the wrong platform. It's because you're not investing in the actual video and audio, Brian.
There's as we speak, probably the largest teacher of foreign language conference is going on right now. And I've got Slack from work open. Coworkers are there and they're sitting in our virtual booth waiting for somebody to come by. No one is booking anything. And the one booking they had, they got stood up on. It's just, it's a waste of time.
It's a complete waste of time. Anyway, and again, I guess I feel like I'm working on big events, but I will flat out say that I think that people should think about regular, like, how do you do regular things with folks? You can do some events and figure out what those are, but you should be filling in between those lots and lots of regular interactions. Next question.
Moving on to Ernest Floyd of Bastrop, which I think is in Texas. I did a Zoom meeting week in a large hall. It was on a large drop-down projector screen, and the sound was over the audio system. I've got one coming up in a few weeks, and the presenter would like to interact with the audience. What do you suggest? It's in a 6,000 square foot room.
We've talked about this a couple times. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. For the audio coming from the hall going to the remote presenter, try to minimize bleed as much as possible. And I would actually say, for the feed, again, going to the presenter from the hall, keep original sound turned off. Make sure echo cancellation is enabled so that it's clean going to the remote presenter. It doesn't matter that much as long as the presenter could hear what's being said. And then on the way back, of course, presenter has to be on headsets, not open speakers, to minimize again the bleed and the loop back. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Minimize bleed both ways.
There's a couple things there. One is if you don't have a really good sound engineer, you want to use an SM58, something with a lot of high off-axis rejection on stage. Even just for that part, you can have everyone have lavs or headsets before that, but when they have that interaction back and forth, you just get a mic that isn't going to pick up the speakers. It's not perfect, but it'll make it much easier than if you're using an omnidirectional. Even if you're using a WLR 185 or whatever, it's still going to pick up enough of the speakers that you're going to have issues. And so number one is to use something that's going to do that. What we do is use Dugan auto mixing to go back and forth between when the Zoom person's talking, it's pushing the mics down. When the mics are talking, it's pushing the Zoom down. So if you have someone that understands how to do that, it's very effective. The other thing to think about is if you put a person on a big screen, you don't want to use a teleprompter. You think you do, but you don't. So when we send point-to-points out with the person speaking to an audience, we actually put the monitor right underneath the camera. What that'll do is it'll create an eye line that goes below the camera. It'll eerily look like they're looking at the audience. like it's kind of freaky. It looks like the Wizard of Oz, the Great Oz, but it's there's an eye line that goes down just below the camera that will look like they're looking at the audience. And it's something we came up with by accident. We just put the video in the wrong place one time, because we had a teleprompter up and then we had a monitor underneath for notes and we swapped it by accident. And the speaker looked down, and as soon as we saw it, we were like, oh, we're going to keep that. so that's a little trick. Anyway, next question.
Next question comes to us from Robert Green in Los Angeles. What apps and techniques do you use for scanning objects with the iPhone 12 lidar?
I'm using Sitescape and 3D Scanner app. I've downloaded Polycam based on Guy's recommendation, but I haven't played with it very much yet. So if anyone has anything to add, yeah, those are the three that I think are the winners at the moment. Those are the three leaders. And we'll come back to that. We might even do a second hour where we just show what we've been scanning and talk about the scans and what's working and not working. Yeah, let's do that next week. All right, next, go ahead, John, real quick.
I keep showing people at the bar that I hang out this lidar stuff and then the USDZ stuff.
Yeah.
It was so funny. You see these old guys look at the USDZ pop onto the table. They kept looking around for the object. It was amazing.
It's I will say that beyond anything else, the USDZ and the lidar is a great party trick. It's always like you just pull it out and start doing something. People are like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's a fun little trick. All right, next question.
TJ Asher of the panel says, I hear that it's a good idea to have all your Final Cut Pro media on a separate drive to use when editing. What are some recommendations for a decent USB-C bus-powered drive for use with a 13-inch MacBook Pro? It's an Intel MacBook, not the new one.
Go ahead, Sky.
G-Tech. It's just rock solid, and it's been around. It's trusted in Hollywood for a long time.
And and the G-Techs are great. I have a bunch of those. I also use what I carry around in my bag because it's super small is the Samsung T7. You can't write to it from the camera. So you can't, whatever reason the cameras won't record to it. I only use T5s, but I edit off the T7s all the time, and they're fast. Whatever it is, the sustained isn't as much of a problem. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Well, I use a lot of different drives, and one of them I've been playing with as of late it's a little bit bigger. It's the OWC Mercury Elite Pro Dual, so it's 2 drives in one. You can RAID it, you can stripe it, you can just use it as 2 different hard drives if you want to, and it's also got a dock to it, so you can actually. I have another USB plugged into it, so I can transfer my card media straight into it. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
Yep, Eric, real quick.
Weren't you asking? Bus powered, right?
Yep,
bus powered. Answer?
Yep, bus powered. So my T7 is bus powered. I don't know about the other ones. Go ahead, Bill, real quick.
Yeah, the SSDs will be much faster, but I still use old Western Digital USB 3 drives, and they work fine if you're not working in 4K or above. If you're just doing standard 1920, 1080, they're solid.
Next question.
Moving along to Benjamin Anjaput. Is it? Antiput, I'm sorry, Bay Area. Any suggestions for useful resources for high schooler interested in virtual event production?
Do a lot of it. Find something that you can do on Zoom and start to get a sense of what the issues are, and then volunteer for things if you can. But try to help other organizations do them. I mean, especially if you're in high school and you don't need to make revenue, the thing to do is get out there and do it. You can study a bunch of things, but go do it as often as possible. Go ahead, Sky. And again, in high school, I wasn't the kid that was trying to figure out how to make money. I was just doing things that I was interested in, because you're trying to, you have the best spongy brain you'll ever have. So, do everything you can to be overwhelmed and absorb as much as you can, as fast as you can.
Churches would love your energy.
Yeah. Church guy.
Yeah, I would look at Livestream Studio. They got a big discount right now. I used to pay for this dongle right here, but now you can get the software free. And I was noticing in Jeff Keithley's posts on Facebook that they're using that software for some of the highest level gigs that they're doing, and you can switch in the cloud. It's pretty darn cool. Like I can have it running on my machine, and then I could give him a web interface, and he can cut and add graphics from his place. So for a kid, I mean, it's like $50 a month or something like that, and you get your own player that you can embed without YouTube's, heavy hand on your music and things like that. So I'd be playing with Vimeo. As strange as that sound, I never thought I'd be, recommending that, but it's true. Right now, that's probably the best thing to be learning with, because it's so cheap and it's there. It's just done.
Absolutely. We're going to run a little heavy on these questions because I fell behind, but we'll only about 5 minutes. Next question.
Benjamin Antiput is done, and we're moving on to Earl Negrete of Westlake Village. Thoughts on the older Logitech BCC950, getting the phone controls to work with a program other than Skype, hopefully with Zoom.
I never got that to work. I own one. Well, not that I'm bitter, but I just never got it to really do what I thought it was going to do. So I don't have any. I couldn't get it to work when it was new, so I don't know about how to make it work otherwise. Go ahead, John.
I owned one of these and I didn't like it either. It ended up in the corner of a conference room.
Yeah. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Brody Hefner of New York City. What are the circumstances in which the panel would recommend recording in 32-bit float versus the more standard 24, 16-bit DaVinci Resolve and some other software apparently won't currently accept a sound file in 32-bit?
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
It's great for situations if you're in production recording where you have to remote something like you're doing a dialogue scene in a car and there's no room to drag along the sound mixer and wireless won't work. If you have to set it and forget it, situations where you can't actively mix a scene, it's perfect for that, because then you can, doesn't matter what they do, if they shoot off gunshots in the middle of the scene or scream or whisper, you can recover all that without bringing up the system noise and or worry about overmodulation. So
yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly what Courtney said, and also in addition to that, when you're doing effects gathering and you don't know what's going to happen, if you don't really have like an idea of how loud something would be. So like, if you're recording a shuttle launch or something wherein you can't really predict how loud something would be, that would be a good situation to use it. But for dialogue, just stick to 24-bit.
And as we finish these last questions, if you're an educator, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll start bringing you in, and then we'll do a quick mic check. Next question.
Brody Hefner is back with a little follow-on saying, how is it best to convert a 32-bit audio file to 24-bit?
Go ahead, Nikki.
On the more affordable end of things, Adobe Media Encoder, you can do conversion there, and it will maintain metadata, which is really cool.
Next question.
Next question comes from Sky Gleason in the panel. Would you shoot video for a still photo headshots with a Blackmagic 4K with a Sigma Art lens? I wouldn't, but I will tell you why if you want to know.
Hey, Bill.
The biggest problem with using the Blackmagic cameras as a still camera is that there's no photo sync process in there. And most people who are shooting headshots at a high level would probably be using an external flash system for control. And so without a sync port on the camera that works efficiently, it's really hard to do high level headshots.
And I haven't used sync for 25 years, so I don't, so it wouldn't bother me at all, because I was like, sync, I want to see I want to see what it looks like all the time. I don't want to take a picture and look at it. So I think that, go ahead, TJ.
If I'm understanding the question, looks like he's just saying, get some video of the person while they're not moving, just, posed whatever nicely, going, okay, yep, I'm doing this, hold it, and then capture that screenshot.
You get the resolution. I mean, I think the main thing is motion blur. When you take a photo, your shutter speed is a lot faster than 1/60th of a second. So that's the thing to kind of think about when you go through that is that going to be enough where you're not going to are you ever going to find a perfectly still frame that doesn't have any motion blur? I think the motion blur is the real challenge with pulling stills out of video. In general, that's what we found, is it just looks a little soft, and it's just because there's motion blur there. So if you can turn that shutter speed up to what you would use in a camera. I mean, a lot of us, again, if we were zooming in, a lot of time we wouldn't use 1/60th of a second for a person because it would be too slow. So those are the things we want to kind of think through. Mickey?
Yeah, this is actually like something that was kind of sold by Red like back maybe 8 years ago, when their DSMC line first came out. As Alex mentioned, like you have to go at a much higher shutter speed than what you're used to when you're shooting video. You're probably playing in the 2000.
You don't go 2000, but like 120 to 180. I think that 2000 is really that's a challenge. That's why you end up with strobes, because
and that's what you usually, like when you're shooting with strobes, you want to be at that speed. But essentially what I'm trying to get at is you need like a lot of strong continuous lighting. Like with strobe, it's just like one big flash. You need continuous lighting for it. And also keep in mind that 4K comes out to around 9 megapixels of like if you turn it into a still. So make sure that 9 megapixels is enough for what you need to do with the still. If you're printing out something huge like a billboard, might not be enough.
Next question. We're going to keep moving.
Yeah. Okay. Moving along. Sam Greenwood in Toronto says, Alex, have you thought of making a wiki with the answers to questions and show notes?
We've thought of it. just more infrastructure. So there's we are looking at putting up a website soon. I just keep working on it. I just keep on getting work. So it's just a matter of figuring out how we do it. But we're going to put in a website up that takes the things that are the most common, not every answer, but the things that are the most commonly discussed, and pushing them into something that we can refer to. Next question.
Moving on to Jeffrey Powers, Black Friday week is here. And in relation to that, I'm seeing a lot of video deal bundles. Example, After Effects Juice has a $2,000 pack for $150. Does anyone use for editing? And is this or alternatives a great deal?
I use a lot of the motion VFX stuff for stuff which is similar to that, I think, but I don't use After Effects, and I don't use After Effects with graphics. I use motion for graphics, and so as a result, I don't really think about it that way. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, just on deals. Waves has deals all year round, but the best deals come out during Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So this now's the time to buy.
Yeah. Next question.
Moving on to this question from Dick Brewer in Guatemala. I'm doing, what do you think about having a cooking show with real actors over a virtual or augmented reality background? This could give the ability to have an ideal kitchen with the live activity.
It's really hard to do. I've done it. I've done it with cooking shows. It's really hard to do because you want to move the cameras around a lot, and then the virtual thing, just be tying the virtual sets back into a camera that you want to be handheld or close-ups or wides. Logistically, it becomes a bit of a nightmare. It's not something we're not ever going to do. We're playing around with some ideas around Unreal Engine and camera match moving and so on and so forth related to this, but it's something we backburnered and we did a fair bit of 15 years ago. And just, it was because I thought it was going to be a great idea, and it just limited what we could do, and we ended up with a better show without it, or we did that whole show with it, but the next time someone asked us for a cooking show, we didn't do it again. That's my 2 cents. Next question.
Earl Negrete of Westlake Village says, Vaddio RoboSHOT 30 HD PTZ camera, white, had an intern swap power and RS ports, and that equaled dead cam. Has anyone successfully repaired or recovered from a power damaged camera, or is this now e-waste?
In some countries, you can find someone that can replace that power supply. Like there's in places where people keep things running, not in the United States, but in things where people keep things running, there's always somebody that can unwire that and put something else in that'll make it work. It's probably a power supply issue. Go ahead, Mickey, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, if you sent current to the RS port and you fried some ICs, that might not be
the end
as repairable.
Yep. Next question.
And the final one, and from the preschool versions, comes from Sky. If you're on a Zoom event with a chef and other Zoom guests, would you rather be entertained or educated? What percentage of observation to participation would you want in that 1 to 3 hours of a fun Zoom cooking experience?
I guess I would think of comedy like sugar. Like it's the sugar that you add to it. And so it makes everything more palatable. But if you put too much of on it, you're like, ooh, that's too sweet. So I think that's how I would think about it is a percentage of, I think it is a lot of, when you watch something. Alton Brown makes a lot of learning how to cook fun, if you watch Good Eats, but there's still a lot of protein in there as well. A lot of good information and data that's there. I think that for me, the perfect thing would be super techie as well as details of how to do it as well as fun, and I think this like touch of it, the modernist cuisine kind of data mixed with great technique, mixed with some fun banter, I think is the perfect cooking show that we haven't seen so far. Now, Jeffrey.
I think if you want to do long form, because some people don't want to see you pull the result out of the oven. They want to go through the whole baking process step by step by step. So it's really depends on what you decide that the show is going to do, and then you could turn around and do the live show like that, and then edit it down, and then put it out as an edited version.
Well, that's why this is a unique experience with Zoom, is that people are cooking at the same time. So it's kind of like being in a class, but it's also got to be interesting and entertaining.
Well, but even in the class, I've taken a lot of cooking or some cooking classes, and even in the class, they kind of pre-build some of the stuff for you because it's like, oh, that'll take too long. The main thing is that it's fine to just go in real time through the whole thing as long as you have something to talk about. So the key is that if you have conversation, you're answering questions and you have other things you want to talk about and discuss and everything else, as long as you fill that time up, there's lots of people that would love to be there for 4 hours sitting there talking to you about making pizza or whatever it is, or an hour and a half or 2 hours talking about it and having conversations. And maybe even that's in a Zoom environment. Maybe that's even you break into Zoom rooms and you all just sit there and talk to each other, and then you come back and do it together. And so I don't think that necessarily you need to make it short. TV made it short because they had to fit into 22-minute and 44-minute windows, but we don't have to do that. And so it's not, what we prove here every day is it's not the length of the content. It's just what's in the, it's the nature of the conversation is why people stay a long time or a short time. Or whether, and people talk to me all the time about, well, we were told to make it really short. I'm like, I told you to make the presentations really short, because that's the boring part. Make the conversation long, and so, talk for a couple minutes and then discuss stuff. But anybody who's seen me at NAB, like what I'm doing in this forum is no different than what I used to do at NAB when I talked. I would just get up and start answering questions and wander aimlessly around, and people came out of it without a syllabus, but with a lot of extra information. Go ahead, TJ.
You were actually in the kitchen with Madeline, which you are right now, Sky. I mean, if she was teaching you to cook, you figure that percentage for yourself and extrapolate that for the audience, because she could go on for an hour just monologuing about something if she wanted to.
The trick is not to monologue. So that's that is the thing that Madeline has to kind of figure out, is the conversation and banter. It's the back and forth with the audience that's going to keep them coming back.
Well, and she found, because her personality is so strong, that she wanted to be taught by other people. Otherwise, she understands herself as a producer and personality that it's an overwhelming thing.
Yep. All right. We're going to shift gears. We will run a little heavy on the other end too, to make up for the fact that we're running heavy here. So we're not cutting it short. So if you have education questions, questions about e-learning, questions about K through 12, college, whatever, this is where we start discussing all of these things and trading notes in a lot of ways. And so so this is kind of what we're working on here. So if there's any other educators that want to join us, please go ahead and raise your hand. We're going to do a real quick mic check, but we will go until 9:15, so we will have time there. Mickey, do you want to run the mic checks?
Sure thing. Hey guys, if you guys see the meters, it's part of the group here. Our goal is at negative 24 LUFS on the short-term DSAT number on the upper left-hand side of the meters. Let's start off with John Edelson and then Steve Cotton afterwards.
Good morning from beautiful Monterey, California. And I need to pin the meter, but I think I'm a little hot, so let me bring the volume down. And as I bring the volume down, get a little closer to that magical 24. And the magical 24 is Thanksgiving Day coming up soon.
All righty, that's a good check. Steve and then Roscoe.
All right, good morning, San Francisco Bay Area and around the world. This is Steve Cotton, 1, 2, 3, 4, test check, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is about the level that I will normally be talking at.
Yeah, just give us the slightest nudge up, Steve, and you should be good. Just the tiniest nudge up. Roscoe and then Michael Ball.
All right, I'm looking at some new toys today, and we're just, I'm all the way peaked up. I'm a little hot, so I'll come down here in Zoom. Now, maybe I'm not so hot there. All right, go back up to there and see where I'm sitting. And I guess I'll have to talk a little louder because I'm all the way up. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Michael, and then Tony Mobley.
All right, good morning from San Francisco. It's been a couple weeks, but I'm happy to be back. And hopefully my Zoom camera stays on today, because I don't know why it is swapping settings on me randomly.
So you're coming in maybe a 2 or 3
too
dB
hot.
too loud.
All right, let me pull that back down a little bit, and let's see where we're stabilizing. Let's see, that might have been a slight bit too much. Let's see. Yeah, it's nice and clear today, which is hopefully good. And how's that? Should I
just bump down a dB or two.
Down?
Down.
All right, down a little bit more.
All right, thank you. Tony and then Kent afterwards.
Good morning, office hours. I hope everyone is doing well. I'm happy to be here this morning. It is a bright sunny day here in Noonan, Georgia. I'm using my 1C webcam this morning, as well as I have my iPhone set up for video as well.
Oh, that's a good check. Thank you. Although Tony, maybe I would turn off audio sound on your end. We're just getting some background noise from you. Alrighty, Kent and then Trevor afterwards.
Good morning from Salem, Oregon, where it is cold and rainy as usual, and maybe a little bit more rainy. I'm going to go ahead and pull that back a little bit. Looks like I was close, but then it went a little too high maybe. So I am going to still talk a little bit here and trying
Maybe
to
bump back up a dB or two, Kent.
Okay. So going back up a little bit to see where that is. Looks like that number's close to where it's supposed to be. Sweet.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Trevor. And then real quick, I just want to test Tony's level again after he turned off virtual sound. So Chris, and then we'll go back to Tony.
Good morning.
Yes.
Is it this Chris?
Yes. Yes. Sorry, Chris Clark.
Good morning from Tempe, Arizona. Things are beautiful here, as is usually the case in what other people call winter. Looking forward to reconnecting with my virtual friends on office hours.
Yeah. Chris, just give us a dB down. Just back off a little bit.
All right. Looking forward to.
Might have gone down too far, so
All
split
right.
the difference on that.
Got it. I
Okay,
think we're going to
thank
be
you very
good.
much.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
Tony, and then Emily afterwards.
Hey, Mickey, I'm actually switching headphones. I think that's the problem. So if you can come back in just a second.
Yeah. But on your mic, Tony, just give us. You're still going through the ATEM, right?
Yes.
So just give us one click down on the ATEM.
That is one click down on the
Alrighty.
ATEM mini.
I think we're there. Thank you very much, Emily, and then yeah, Emily's last on the list.
Good morning, everyone. Missed you last weekend. Oh, sorry. That was weird. I did a podcast last weekend at the same time as this because of you guys. Someone else knew about me and asked me to be on their podcast, which was pretty cool. So, but anywho, it looks like I'm a little quiet.
I think you're bouncing
okay?
up and down there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Welcome, everybody. It's good to have all of you back. It's one of my favorite conversations of the day, of the week. So it's good to see all of you. And I think anything that people want to share about what's going on before we get into the questions? Go ahead, Mickey.
Sorry, yeah, I'll take this opportunity as well. Alex, just give us a tiniest nudge up on your level.
Okay, so now I'm going to give it the tiniest nudge up and try to bring my audio up a little bit higher and try to get, just to have it be just a little bit brighter and a little closer to the 23 that we've been looking for. How's that? That sound pretty good? Look pretty good? I think we're
Sorry,
right
I
in
think,
that area.
did I miss out on Trevor? Sorry, my bad, Trevor.
No worries. I would feel more confident if I had it completely rebuilt everything here in the last few days. So that probably would have been a bad long-term choice. So I will
So
keep
you
talking because
Might
it
have
is moving all
gone
over.
way too far down.
How's that? Is that a good sound level?
Yeah, I think we're there. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
very much.
Does anyone have anyone in the panel before we jump to the questions have anything that has jumped out or been a big something that they noticed in the last week? Go ahead, Kent.
Well, we officially finished our semester this week. So yesterday was the last official class and we survived. And I think things are better. Were better on Friday than they were when we started. So I guess we'll call that a win.
That's great. Anyone else? Go ahead, Tony.
Unfortunately, here in Georgia, it seems as if, regardless to the COVID cases going up, we are pushing forward with students being in school. So that's kind of where we are right now.
I do find it funny that in the news, we barely see any mention of schools having any impact on COVID, even though we took, tens of millions of children who will most likely don't have the processing to understand any threat, will probably not be affected by it, and may not even show symptoms. And for some reason, we don't think that would have any effect on the COVID cases. I find that to be fascinating. Anyway, so that's all. Like when people talking about sending their kids back to school, I'm kind of like, I think that would be the ultimate super spreader. So go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, we actually had something scheduled. We've been doing productions in the evening, and we pulled off 3, and we've tried to keep everyone 6 feet apart. We had 25 people all meeting in the same room right after Thanksgiving, and it has been canceled, which is a good call. We had people in tears talking about the safety of everybody and the students and stuff like that. So it was good that the upper management, i.e. the dean, listened, talked about how this was all approved while we were under purple, therefore we should push on. But people finally decided, no, we need to take a really, delay it at least. And all these students are going to be back in the spring. So
right. And I don't know if it'll be any better, but we'll see. I think that's the thing. And this whole like back and forth, which I talk about every week, is just like this insanity of we want something to be true so badly that we just keep ignoring all the data around us. So it's a pretty amazing example of that process. Because I personally think that the schools are the #1 spreader, like by no close second. Nothing else that's even near it, is what's spreading the current situation. So anyway, so that's why we're here, trying to figure out ways that we can do it virtually, and how do we make this actually work in the short term. What questions do we have, Bill?
Well, the first one that came in upvoted was James Babbitt in San Diego, who says, would the new MacBook Pro 13 and the MacBook Pro 16 show the same maximum number of people in a Zoom grid? So I guess we're talking resolution versus screen size.
I haven't tried my MacBook Pro. I'm using a MacBook Pro 13 on the road, and it shows 49 just fine. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, it's dependent on the processor, and Zoom has a support the page that shows you exactly which processors will work. I'll post that in the chat, but the 16-inch, all of them will support 49. The new 13-inch, the M1, that I'm not sure of because Zoom doesn't have a page on that yet.
I will guess that if the 16-inch MacBook Pro supports 49, the new Air will support 49. The new M1 chip is faster than most of the rest of the MacBook line. In fact, it's faster than many desktops. And so, we're going to see, I don't think that you're going to have a problem with that type of processing. It's really built for it. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Roscoe.
Yeah, I wonder though if Zoom is actually just doing a call to see what processor is on the machine instead of actually testing the capabilities of it. So if ever that's the case, you have to wait for an update from Zoom.
Right. Yep. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Where is that to be found in the settings? Because I'm on a new MacBook 13.
And are you on the 13 with the M1?
13 M1, yeah.
And well, how many people are you seeing? Well, I guess you're seeing less than 25 right now because
right.
we just don't
Yeah.
have that many.
I have a 4x.
It's the video tab of your settings right at the bottom. If you're on the most recent update, you have an option that says maximum participants, and my options are 25 and 49.
Maximum in the video settings tab.
Yeah.
So
right at the bottom.
Can I? I don't see it. Oh,
so
there it is. Yeah, 29, 49. I have both clicks.
Yeah,
I can share real quick.
So the
if you
M1.
want.
No, that's good. The M1 will support it, which I'm not surprised by. Well, the question now, Roscoe, is that you have an M1. What do you think?
Well, I've been playing with it, so it took me a while. I had to run Rosetta to load Zoom, which was one thing. So I was surprised by that. It took me getting my dongles. I have both a I have both an OWC to get into Ethernet, and I also have the Apple adapter. So both of those have had to be unplugged and replugged in order to get them to actually recognize my C920 camera, which is what you're actually seeing me on right now. But everything else is blazingly fast and really cool.
Yeah,
I'm done.
It's a pretty from an educator's perspective. The only thing I'll say is that the hardware now, if schools go down that path at all, what you can get for a very inexpensive piece of hardware is incredibly fast, from a, media creation tool process, and it's going to keep getting better. So it's an interesting opportunity. Anyway, next question.
Moving on to Benjamin Antipit, and I apologize, I think I messed your name up twice now. He asks, given a choice between live streaming platforms, any preferences between Vimeo Live, YouTube Live, Twitch, or others? Note, he just finished a few shows at his school through Vimeo Live and scheduled through Restream, but it was pricey.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, StreamYard, I think we've talked about it on here before. It's basically, there's a free version of it, and the paid version isn't too bad. I use that all the time, and it's so simple. And
people are watching in StreamYard, or are you publishing it to an external output?
To YouTube. Yeah. So it goes out to YouTube. So I guess that is the answer to his question. Yeah. And I don't know if that would go out to Sky. Would that go out to Vimeo? I don't know.
They have an RTM stream capability. I'll go look. Or Rachel Rachel would probably be able to answer that.
Yeah, I think Vimeo, I know a lot of corporations that are using Vimeo, not Vimeo, but StreamYard to, because it can do the presentations in the two ways, and you can add a lot of those bits and pieces, and you can stream to things like LinkedIn, which, there's not a lot of options for. So, so it's an interesting, platform for that. But as far as the output platform, what I think of is stability versus cost versus, availability. So, YouTube is probably, in my opinion, while I hate the interface that they've come up with for YouTube for managing live events, it's still the most stable and most scalable and highest quality publicly free available streaming platform out there. So if you're going to output something up to 4K and you want it to just work, generally YouTube is going to be the one that it's got the most history, it's got the most infrastructure, regardless of the horrible interface they put on the front of it. It's a beast of a system, and so that's the advantage of YouTube. The problem we end up with is clients or organizations that don't want people to click through to YouTube. They just want you to watch the video on their site. So when they pop it up, they watch it on their in their environment, and they don't want the YouTube logo there, so they can click through and go to their YouTube page. In that case, you need something like Vimeo, Livestream/Vimeo, or other platforms that are basically clear list platforms that allow you to basically say, this is just a video frame, and I can turn off the Vimeo logo and I can turn off the other things. Those cost money because they're not getting anything out of it. YouTube gets something out of it, advertising. Nothing comes for free, so you have to start paying for it if you don't want that. So there's that. Twitch, the encoding quality and stability of Twitch is not the highest in the world, as far as compared to YouTube. Also, the commenting is, the kids in your class probably are used to Twitch, and so they do it. It's like hieroglyphics to me. It is the most amazing mess of commenting that I've ever seen. It's worse than YouTube, which is hard, is saying a lot, And so I wouldn't, but Twitch, there's a lot of good folks that follow it. I don't like the interface at all. Like, I just don't like Twitch, and I admit that I still stream to it, and we'll probably, I think I told you that in December, I don't know exactly when in December, probably in a couple weeks, we're going to start streaming this to everything. We're just going to push this out. And it's not because I think it's a good idea. It's because I'm curious. I'm curious, like, what do people do with this on Twitch, and what do they do with it on YouTube versus Facebook versus LinkedIn versus, like, how many viewers show up, and what's their behavior and that type of thing. And so that we'll do that experiment, but I think that in Twitch you do have a lot of viewers that are used to watching for a long time, so that's an interesting methodology for that process. I don't really recommend I streamed a lot to Facebook, but I don't recommend it. I think that you're fighting against the social stream, both Facebook and Twitter. I think that what we see on the back end is extremely low average view time. And I measure everything on average view time. So we have average view time in this group is over 90 minutes inside of Zoom. Now it's only 20 to 25 minutes in YouTube, but we're not interacting with them. So if you're on YouTube, you're not getting any, like literally there's no comment interaction. We just completely ignore you, and people still stay an average of 22 minutes, which by the way, on YouTube, as YouTube measures it, is a very, very long time. Like 22 minutes on a YouTube event is numbers that you get case studies written about inside of Google, and we do that every day. But that's without even talking to the folks; they're just watching. Go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to ask if you had average view time or participation time when people are using Makana, either the mobile app or the desktop.
Well, that was the trick. So Makana massively changes the number. The Makana average, I don't have the exact data for the Makana. We can drive that, into what they're looking at. But we saw this in the earlier versions, pre-Makana, where we were doing tests of the previous version before Makana. We were doing view tests where we would take the same video and put it on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform. The Facebook was 26 seconds, was the average view time. YouTube was 6.5 minutes, which was good. And the previous version, the platform, was 37 minutes. So, and it was just so big, we kept on doing it over and over again. In fact, you guys saw some of those tests inside of the Final Cut user group. So the Final Cut user group was one of the big test platforms for that. And the numbers were so much higher. And what was interesting was that we realized that part of the thing that made it work was that it wasn't a clean screen, and it didn't have, it was a place to go. And there was actually a lot of things going on. Like and it's part of why I think Twitch has a lot of viewers, is there is a lot of things, a lot of useless things oftentimes, but a lot of things. So when the content is boring, there's something else to look at. So you have a chat running along here, you have, questions, you're voting on questions, you're reading the questions, you're looking at the comments. There's all these other things that you can do while you're in the system when the content itself is a little slower or not right on target. Whereas when you're in YouTube or on Facebook, the moment it is not interesting, everyone leaves. Like you show a still frame for a minute and you've lost 75% of your audience. Like it is, and Twitter is the same. I mean, Twitter's worse. So we just see Twitter is that ever since they stopped being streamed, ever since the large events stopped being streamed by BAM, which is the big encoding, that got bought by Disney, their internal platforms, the quality is so low that I find Twitter just unwatchable. So I think the video quality is low. There's no reason to stay there. Same thing with Facebook. And so I don't think they're good platforms. Facebook used to be worth it because it would tell everyone who followed you to go watch it. So you'd get a good chance of getting in front of people that you wouldn't normally. But when they took that away, they have no value add, in my opinion. I think I think that they could. Facebook has a huge power to do something like that, but the current structure of the infrastructure, and they did, but the current structure adds no value to streaming to it at the moment, in my opinion. Next question.
We're moving on to Bill McIntosh of Farmingville, New York, who asks, when using Google Forms in quiz mode, not using locked Chromebooks, it is rumored that students can see the correct answers by viewing the page's source code. I don't see it. Has anyone else heard of this?
Emily?
Convenient.
So in the spring, you could access the source code. And
that's awesome. That's so awesome.
Yeah. And if you looked at the source code and you knew how to read it, you could find the answer. However, since this spring, Google has done a patch, and now only the creator and collaborators can look at the source code and see the answer. But when students do it, or people that are taking your quiz, if they look at the source code, it doesn't divulge the answer anymore.
You might get a B in English, but you get an A for geek. You know,
That's what I told the teachers. I was like, look, if they figured that out, you should be giving them an A for just figuring out the source code. Like, I know enough about code to be like dangerous to myself, not to others. But like, if they could go through, if they knew to right click, go to source format, and then read that line, there's hundreds of lines of code through there. And to be able to go through and figure out that, you know, this is the question, here are the multiple choice answers, and here's the answer. Like, they get an A for effort because that was a multiple choice test. Like, you know, multiple choice tests, multiple guess, whatever you want to call them. Like, they're not high level learning exercises. So if the kid did that, like, A. Sorry, A.
That'd be nice to them. They'll be employing us someday.
Right. Next question.
Okay, that one's answered. Eric Hull is next from Mount Vernon, Washington. Are schools finding Zooming on Chromebooks acceptable? What about Google Meet?
Go ahead, Emily.
I'm lucky because I get to experience this in multiple school districts. So I have some schools that use Gmeet and I have other schools that use Zoom. The downside to Zoom on Chromebooks is the limited features. You don't have access to the whiteboard as a participant. You don't have access to the emoji feedback. You can do the feedback in the participant, like raise a hand, yes, no, go faster, go slower, but the emoticons aren't there. You can participate in a poll, but if you're a teacher using a Chromebook, you can't start a poll from Chromebook. So it depends on who has access to which device. So if the entire district is using Chromebooks to access and use with the students, you have limited features. There are workarounds. It depends on whether or not you're allowed to add extensions or use outside software with the Zoom meeting. And then as far as Gmeet goes, they basically keep looking at the Zoom stuff and then adding it to their stuff. So they added breakout rooms last month. They added the raise your hand feature this week. They're adding a timer and ask for help in breakout rooms. That's rolling out this week. And there was something else they just recently added that mirrors Zoom. But some of our schools are not purchasing Zoom because they've already purchased the enterprise version of Google. And so they're trying to make it work because they don't want to have to purchase another piece of software.
Go ahead, Eric.
How about performance? How about performance of Zoom on Chromebooks? Do you see any difference there?
The performance as far as like watching videos and stuff, or watching the teachers or doing anything.
Just connectivity, pure connectivity kind of.
We haven't had
issues.
a problem. Kids at home occasionally complain of choppiness and pixelation, but I chop that up to their bandwidth, whether or not they have enough bandwidth at home, if there's multiple devices connecting from home. Teachers recording on Zoom their lessons and then posting them to their LMS have been perfectly fine and high quality. So we haven't had a problem with that.
All right, go ahead, Ken.
Our school got Chromebooks for professors to use in Zoom rooms, in classrooms, kind of with a hybrid model. And I think the final verdict was that it just wasn't working. And they have to try something else. People bring their own laptops or that kind of thing. It didn't work at all for us. Yeah.
And that was a feature problem?
Yeah, I think it was the Chromebooks just don't have enough processing power to keep up with all of the things that it was asking it to do. And so one of my colleagues just brought in her MacBook Air and it just rocked it. It had no hiccups at all. So I think it's just because they're just not very robust. Because we're asking it to do it like 5 or 6 different pretty powerful things at the same time.
Yep. Go Trevor and then Michael.
What we're finding too is it really depends on the Chromebook you've bought. If you have a newer Chromebook with a more powerful chip, it's able to do a lot more features better. For us, we also have some really old Chromebooks in our stack and out with students. And for them, they can watch the Meet just fine. And we're in Google. They can watch the Meet just fine, but if they even want to try blur or any of that, it'll actually drop frames and actually slow down the entire computer. So it really depends on how nice the Chromebooks are. If you pay the money for the better Chromebook, it'll do it. If you cheaped out on the power of the Chromebook, not enough RAM, not enough processor, then you're going to watch it like a video, and that's all you're going to get out of it.
And I think that what corporations, some corporations have figured out, and then education is starting to figure out too, is that I think that when people buy pieces of hardware, they underestimate, they look at the cost of the hardware, and they very rarely measure the cost in pain, and time. And, they just aren't, I think when you're buying a lot of the less expensive pieces of hardware, you're not taking into account, you're basically saying that people's time doesn't matter. I'm sorry, but like their time and their effort and all those other things don't matter. When you have something that is more powerful, that is going more smoothly, it's a huge productivity change in what's going on. And I think that that's also, as we keep moving forward, why I think that maybe not for the students, at least to start, but for the teachers, it's why I'm going to keep on saying that I think that they should be moving the teachers away to MacBook now, especially with the M1. Even an Air is faster than a MacBook Pro, and that teachers having to create content. I mean, I guess you guys can tell me, how do you create content on a Chromebook? It's I mean, to the level at which we create it on a Mac. And I think that teachers have to build something that's actually interesting for students to watch, and they're kind of drawing with bricks right now. Go ahead, Michael.
Trevor mostly said what I was going to, which is just the range of Chromebook models is what's really quite wide, and in many ways wider than the range of just traditional PC laptops. If you're concerned about features, the other thing to think about is a Chromebook, like the name sounds, is basically the Chrome browser in a laptop form. And it can do a little bit more than a typical Chrome browser just on your computer, but it is just worth thinking about. Like, you don't have quite the same extensible options as plugging in an additional device or, adding every extension, especially if they are school provided and are locked down as well. So, you have a combination there with what you can and can't do.
Yeah, go ahead, Trevor.
Well, I look at a Chromebook as a glorified tablet with a keyboard attached. That's all it is. And it's not a very powerful one. Now, for us, we did issue every teacher a laptop. Now, we didn't do MacBooks. I run IT, and I actually hate supporting Mac. Some of it might just be pains from the past of Macs doing horrible things and crashing our entire internet. But I can't imagine any school in good conscience giving a Chromebook to a teacher and saying, make content. We've played with it. I've had some staff do it. For us, we ended up, they have PCs. It's an i7. It's got 32 gigs of RAM. We gave them powerful computers. It has built onboard graphics and said, go do stuff. This should get you there. Because if your device is the bottleneck when they're trying to learn, what's the point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, and the Chromebook that was issued to our district, the limit was the screen that I was just showing. And so I got my kid a MacBook Air, and really pays dividends. I was watching him take a test, and he had to write down on the whiteboard the answers and then hold them up. And the teacher's like, struggling like that. And I'm like, oh man, I know what to get her for Christmas, because this little $68 Facebook portal will boost her up to 720p. $68 you can get these for on Black Friday. So all you teachers, get one of these and you'll get 720p in your meeting. So cool little tip.
Good. That's good. Ken?
So, Guy, could you explain that a little bit more? I think I've seen you talk about that a few times. So would I hook that up to like my Facebook? I'm just like on a regular, Zoom or how does that work?
WhatsApp. So it's just let me pull it up here. Sorry, I got it all locked down because my kids, let me open up it looks kind of like you can see that. So it looks like a Zoom room in a little 8-inch frame. And then you just join the meeting with this, and it's got a camera up here, and it's got a big speaker and a microphone in the back and a microphone on the front. And they're normally like $129. And I'd actually get the big one if you can spring for it, the bigger one, which is got a better camera, a better speaker. This is this thing.
Can you hook other speakers and cameras to that, or do you have to use that?
Not other cameras. You can hook. It's got a big enough speaker. I mean, that's the speaker right there. It's huge. You can hook up an external display on this one and Ethernet on the bigger
thinking about that, watching you do that, I realized that I can't do a service for the whole school, at least for my kids, by just simply having them jump in. Because my son is on Zoom and my daughter's on Meet, I think, and I can just have them jump into Zooms with that instead of their Chromebook or whatever, and everybody instantly is like, "Wow, the video is so much better when Malachi is here." so it's interesting, interesting thing.
Can you put that link in the Makana, please?
Yep, absolutely.
Guy?
Yeah, go ahead, John, and then Mickey.
Guy on the small one does have a USB-C in the back. I think the 10-inch one does. That then lets you put the Ethernet connector, but I didn't know about the small one.
It does.
It doesn't have any ports on the back. There was this thing, if you guys get one and wonder what this gasket is, I pulled mine off to see what was under there, and it's just nothing. There's nothing. They said, "Don't pull it off," because I just broke mine off. So don't do that.
Is that on the 10-inch one?
There's a gasket.
There's at least one demo unit in Guy's store tomorrow.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mickey.
Is that the 10-inch one, Guy?
This is the 8-inch one, the one that's on sale right now for $68. I got it off Amazon yesterday, and it came by noon. Like, I ordered it after the show because there was a question yesterday, and it came by noon.
So I think the 10-inch one has where you broke that off has the USB-C, but I haven't tested it yet.
That must be what it is.
Go ahead, Mickey, and then Eric.
All right, Guy, that's the Portal Mini, right?
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Add to cart.
Eric.
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back to the whole Zoom versus Meet on a Chromebook. I support AARP Tax Aid, and they bought 48,000 of these Chromebooks, and I have to provide support. And I'd like to make a choice between whether I use Zoom to support counselors or whether I use Meet. And so I thought schools could say, yeah, definitely use Meet, or, because I would think Meet would be optimized, since it's a Google device, that it might be optimized to support the Chromebook better, but I don't know that that's true.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't look like it's a clear winner there. I'm on Meet and Zoom and Blue Jeans and a couple other ones almost every day, and not on Chromebooks though. And I will say that Zoom is still pretty far ahead as far as it goes. I mean, Google's definitely starting to check off all the boxes. The quality of the check marks is the part that Google hasn't quite solved yet. Anyway, next question.
Moving on. And we're moving to James Babbitt in San Diego, who asks, "Hi, Alex. To give a Mac to a non-tech-minded teacher who is used to using an iPad for Zoom meetings, which new setup might work better? Maybe a new one-piece iMac, or maybe a new Mac Mini with a separate monitor, or maybe a new MacBook Pro. What are your thoughts?"
I just get a Mac Air. I mean, for a teacher, a Mac Air or MacBook Pro with the new M1. I won't buy anything at this point. I'm going to hang on and just wait. Here's the issue, is that it's something that a lot of us had thought might be the case and now know is the case, is that the chip architecture that Apple is rolling out is dramatically faster and will continue to get dramatically faster. PCs will not be able to compete because they have to keep on going out to the board bus. There is no way to make that work. They have no way to win. Like there's no, I mean, they're like, so for me, like I'm just looking at where they're going to grow with it, but don't buy an Intel. If you're going to buy something that's less expensive, number one is don't buy an Intel Mac at this point, unless, I mean, if you need something more powerful than what the M1s, you need more RAM or whatever. But if you're doing what teachers are doing, you should not buy an Intel Mac, because the graphics processing and everything else is more efficient on the Mac than it ever has been. And it's more efficient than what PCs are going to do. We're talking about battery life of 18 hours, and so the thing, and the problem is the PC manufacturers will have to do exactly what Apple's doing to compete, and that'll take them a decade to do that. It'll take them 2 years to figure out how to agree on things, 2 years to figure out how to agree who's in the club, and then 2 years to figure out how to do it, and then 5 years to actually do it. So it's a decade of, and I think the reason we saw Hodgman, I think we're about to see a lot of ads. Apple is way ahead, and they're about to just pound everybody into the ground with it. And they just came out with something that is just way more efficient. And it's what had to happen because we were getting down to physics problems. 5 nanometers we're an issue of time and space. Like there's just not enough places to go. And so they just completely turn the whole thing and put it back together in a different way that's way faster, and something that almost they can do. So from a teacher's perspective, I think any of those would probably work well. What you're buying for the MacBook Pro, in my opinion, is fans. And what fans mean is more sustained computing power, and so it just means because the chips will slow down when they get too hot. So if you can afford it, buying a MacBook Pro the little one. I would not literally even, and especially now with OWC having a little breakout and everything else, I wouldn't buy the one I have right now. I travel with a little 13-inch with the 2 Thunderbolts on either side. I wouldn't buy that one if I was buying it right now. I'd buy the M1 with just one on one side, because it's going to be much faster. So I think that Roscoe can. You have one, right? You have a. Yeah. What do you have? Which do you have, Roscoe?
I have the 13-inch, and the 2 adapters. Yeah. The Apple adapter has the power also, so I picked up an HDMI and a USB to USB 3. With the Apple adapter, and then the OWC adapter gives me the Ethernet. So the 2 ports are occupied right now.
I'm gonna get. I have to weigh buying 10 Mac Minis or 10 MacBook Pros on Monday. So I'm still trying to figure that out. But these are for integrated systems that have to go into a whole camera system that is being run remotely. And there's a whole bunch of pieces to it. And I'm testing whether it needs to be rack mountable or not. So I am looking at this in a pretty deep way right now. But I think that, I think the teacher would probably be happy with any, but I think having it all in one, which means you can move it around and do what you need to do with it, I think is probably more important. The Mac Mini we use it as glue for lots of things, but I wouldn't want to have that be my only computer. But I think that you'll be doing well either way. It's the fastest computer out there for the price, Bill.
I was reading an article on Ars Technica last night, and I think Apple has pretty much bought out the 5-nanometer TMSC production pipeline for the next couple of years. And they're even talking about in 2021 to 22 moving to 4 nanometers. And I was thinking, well, that's not that big a change. But wait a second, that's 20%. 20% more dense, faster chip capability in a smaller package that needs less power. That's gigantic. So that's where they're going, I think.
So I think, getting onto that, also those processors are really built for what Apple's about to do with AR and, graphics and everything else. And remember, for teachers, that for another $200, you can have the entire Apple Pro, so you have Final Cut and Logic and compressor and Motion are all. And I will say that for teachers, Keynote is the most important app to know. And then after that, for educational materials, Learning Motion, which is $50 to do more intense, little animations is pretty useful. Anyway.
And for $200, you own that for the rest of your career.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, next question.
Moving on from James.
And by the way, we're low on questions. So if you have education-based questions, otherwise we'll end on time. Anyway, next question.
Tony Mobley, often in the panel. Is Tony here today? I guess not. From Newman, Georgia. Oh, he is. I'm sorry, Tony. I missed you somewhere there. What is the best solution for the classroom regarding the new Macs with an M1 chip? We were just talking about that.
Wait, say that again.
Yeah, you already answered it, okay. Alex. I think.
Okay, regarding the So
I'll throw one other thing. I have not heard the fan yet on this thing. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool.
The one doesn't have a fan, right?
No, he's got the Mac. No, the MacBook.
I got the Pro.
The MacBook Pro 13 does have a fan.
Right, the 13, but the little one is incredibly fast and doesn't even have a fan, so it's going to be pretty much silent.
It is unless you push it. Oh yeah, it just will be as fast when you push it really hard and do a big long render.
Right, I'm actually thinking about putting one in my voice booth because the fan noise has always been a traditional problem.
That's perfect for a voice.
Something like that, like wow.
Yeah. Yep. Next question.
Moving on to Sky Gleason of the panel here from Seattle. Emily, the news is that New York has gone back to total virtual education. What are your insights and perspective? What's the real skinny that you can say and still keep your job?
Well, New York City went virtual as of yesterday. They hit 3%, and that was the agreement with the teachers unions and the parents and the district and the mayor. As far as the rest of the state, as you move upstate, as you start moving upstate from New York City, you get into Putnam, Westchester, and Orange County, which all are above 5%, but they're doing targeted micro closures. So like if Westchester has a specific neighborhood or area, everything in that area shuts down, but not the whole county. Numbers are jumping really quickly. The town that I work in had 49 positive cases on Thursday, up from like 1 or 2 or 5. I think 9 was the most in the past month, but 49 in one day. So we're headed towards yellow. If we go to orange, they'll close the schools down. Most of the districts that I work for in my county have decided to go remote after Thanksgiving for an additional week to kind of wait out the Thanksgiving break, and because a lot of people are still planning to travel, which I think is kind of insane, since every state around us is not, they're all on a list. Like every state in the union is pretty much on a list for us that if you travel to it, you have to have a negative test and quarantine when you get back. Districts are telling us as educators that if we choose to leave and go somewhere and we come home and we have to quarantine, that we will not get paid because we knowingly went somewhere that we shouldn't have, including the states surrounding us, which right now you can travel. Like you live in Pennsylvania. We have a lot of teachers in the Hudson Valley that live in Pennsylvania or Connecticut and travel into the state for work. And then obviously down in the city, there's lots of people coming in from Jersey and New York, Connecticut. And so that's okay. But like, if I want to go see my parents in Connecticut, they're kind of saying that, you know, I'm opening myself up to something. And if I come back and have to quarantine, then it's my time, it's not COVID time. So it's creeping up. The numbers are coming up really, really quickly. It's kind of scary, but we're not nearly as bad as a lot of the country. And to what Alex said at the beginning today about schools being super spreaders, I think at, you know, the college level and the high school level, I think that that's true. At the elementary level, they keep telling us, and I want to see this data, that the spread isn't happening in the schools. It's happening when the kids go to birthday parties or sporting events. Like my nephews are in Connecticut and their hockey season just got canceled, but they've been playing for the last 3 months. And like, it just kept getting worse. Like at first it started off, they could go to hockey practice and games, but only one parent could come and parents were supposed to stay socially distanced. Then it went to, like only the kids could go into the rink. The parents had to watch through a portal. Then it went to the kids have to wear a mask while they're in their equipment, while they're on the ice. Then it went to, we're not going to do hockey anymore. So, I mean, it's just kind of, you know, I don't trust them when they say things like, you know, oh, it's not spreading in the schools. I think it's just, it may not be because we're wearing masks, we're being very vigilant, but at the same time, every day I get a letter from one of my districts saying there's been a positive case in your school. There's been a positive case in this building. There's been a positive case in this building. And it's literally every day I get a letter. And I work for 8 districts. So, you know, that's 8 districts in one area. So,
well, and the thing is that we don't even know how many kids at that age are showing symptoms. That's the thing that I think that makes it a super spreader is I think a lot of kids aren't showing any symptoms at all. And so it's not expressing itself as a kid is getting it. And the teachers may be super careful, so they're not getting it. But that doesn't mean that it's not this giant, you know, it just me like, I guess we get back into this problem between data and common sense is that, you know, I was a kid, we were all kids. Were we going to follow these rules and follow them? You know, like, are you kidding me? Like it just, there's this whole like level of, well, we'll look at these little numbers and we put these little numbers in front of us. We don't see any numbers because we don't want to, right? We want to look at the numbers that make us happy. Right. And so we're going to keep on looking at these numbers, but we're not looking at the common sense of a bunch of kids who aren't being affected, may not be showing any symptoms. And then they're going home and just massively spreading it to their families, you know, like, you know, just an incredible, I mean, I think the entire spike we're seeing this fall is related to school, you know,
well,
like
I also think they keep moving the goalpost on us because, you know, they said at first it'd be like, oh, if there's this number, then we'll close schools. Mm-hmm. If there's this number, then we'll close schools. Well, now they're doing this really weird thing. There's rumors. I don't know. I haven't gotten this substantiated by anyone, but like one of the health departments is doing like, well, if the kid sits next to the door, it's this many points. But if the kid sits in the center of the classroom, it's this many points. And then they add up the points and then they decide whether or not to quarantine the classroom. And I'm like, just if there was a positive case, quarantine the classroom. Like, I don't think it's that hard. Like, better be safe than sorry. And one of the things that we as teachers and educators have been saying is like, I don't want a yearbook where there's a tribute page to a student or a teacher who passed away because you decided to keep schools open during this time.
Right.
So, you know, I don't know. It's really nerve wracking.
And again, I think it's the crazy zigzag. If we had just decided, I know I'm going to keep on saying this, but we just decided that we're going to be virtual the whole school year for everyone, and we're going to take that $33 billion and make it, all, in my opinion, the federal government should have said, here's $33 billion. You can only use it for virtual education. But of course, we had someone who didn't want to do that. So and just say, this is what we're going to move towards. We probably wouldn't have the spike that we're having, and I think that is, and again, I get it. People need to have their kids taken care of. They need daycare, and colleges want to stay relevant. I think a lot of colleges are afraid that if they closed for a year, people may get busy. There's a whole lot of people that, like, I left school for what I thought was going to be a little bit of, I was going to take a semester off, and that lasted 30 some years, is my semester off. So, and that's always the risk, is you get out of that habit, and will people return? Go ahead, Sky.
Well, Emily, I was thinking of you this week because my wife got 2 days of substitute teaching and all of my gear got pillaged. So my background, the headphones, everything. But the funny part was she's listening and I can't hear. And all of a sudden I hear her say, "Good morning, Jason." "Yes." "Well, I'm older than you. How old are you?" So we're hearing all this one-sided conversation of a very impetuous child wanting to, "How old are you?"
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so I think that we'll see how it goes. It's going to be I think the winter will be a crazy ride, and for a lot of, I think that, and again, I think that we'll eventually close everything up because we're going to have to, but I think we'll fight it all the way to the close. Anyway, next question.
Benjamin Antiput from the Bay Area comes back with, after Alex's note about expectations earlier, I was hesitant to ask, but any chance someone can leave a link to the Discord in the chat? You want to explain the Discord?
Yeah, I do. I actually distribute Discord later for the teachers. I'm not always, but I do, and I will right now. So let's see here. Let me go and go ahead. I'll put it in the chat right now, but go ahead and go to the next question.
Okay, we're moving on to Kent Kersey's question, and Kent asks, Alex, why would you do a live stream rather than just make a video? I'm finding professors are having students come to class for things that would be better as asynchronous material.
I think that the answer from my perspective is the best solution is both. So, I don't think that live streaming only is the right answer. I think that the best solution is to get through the content. The lecture content, in my opinion, should be sent ahead of time. And that's what I'm working on for some of the tests of this will be the Resolve training that we're going to do in either December or January. I'm just figuring out the schedule with Ripple. But the idea is I'm going to encourage all of you to go buy something, so I'm letting you know ahead of time. I'm going to work on getting a deal for you, and then I'm going to encourage you all to buy it. But for the educators, this is an experiment that I would suggest trying to work out. Anyway, but the idea is, here's a bunch of video content that's been properly prepared. There's a Discord discussion that can happen at any point in time. And then there may even be multiple little sessions that people can meet on. But the point is then once a week, we're going to get together and we're going to discuss all of that. We're going to be trying the sample files. We're going to be watching the videos, and then we're going to discuss the things that don't make sense to us. To me, that is and in a perfect world, you'll be able to listen to this. We'll have other discussions. I'm going to try to bring together some other DaVinci users and talk, or Resolve users, and have things during. In essence, we're going to train a lot of people in Resolve, but it's an experiment in education, which is how do we train people, attacking them from every direction, where there's audio things to listen to, and there's video things to watch, and there's discussions to have, and there's online, and does that work? And at the end of it, we'll get to the end of the introduction to whatever, and A, we'll decide if we like Resolve as a group, but B, we will, talk about the structure of that, because I think that now the problem is I don't think the average teacher, the reason we haven't done that a lot here is because I have to lean on Ripple to build the video training, and they spend a lot of time working on that. And I think but I want to point to, like, when we do the next, I personally think that when we do the next stimulus, there'll be another stimulus in the spring that's going to be like $3 trillion, and there'll be $35 or $40 billion spent on education. I think that $5 billion should be spent on course material, video course material to support teachers. It's not those teachers creating it, but creating this huge library of animations and video and everything else about math and about history and whatever it is, but so that they can tell their students, go watch that. You don't have to read everything. Blah. You know, you can watch these great videos and these animations and play these games. And, you know, we should put a bunch of money into that so that number one is it would create a stimulus for our industry, you know, but more importantly, it would give teachers what they need, which is assets that they can have the students watch that they don't have to make, because we shouldn't be expecting teachers to be media professionals. You know, I think that the teacher of the future will be, to be honest. I think that teachers that are entering college right now should be trained as media professionals, you know, as we go into the future. But I don't think that we should expect current teachers to do that. Go ahead, Michael, and then Emily.
Yeah, I was going to add that I mean, I think with live stream versus recording, there's a question too of what the student experience is. And for some students, even if it is the same content, the notion that is being delivered live changes their perception and changes their means of participation. And some of this might be I'm spending X many thousands of dollars, and so I have an expectation here that something needs to live up to, which is, you know, I think just that practical thing. The thing I'd say is if you are running a live session that is interactive, you know, getting your question answered immediately, even if it is mostly a lecture session versus something recorded, can be a big advantage. My personal feeling as a teacher is that because I also don't have a ton of time to produce these videos, you know, for the things that I'm pre-recording, I'm basically doing one take, at least this term. But I always want to teach live the first time because the questions and the feedback that I get is so much more valuable. And so if you're making use of the live time, I think it is still a really good way to go. And I've been doing classes that are sort of mixed, you know, at each environment this semester, where I have one class that has lectures both ways, one class that's pretty much all pre-recorded. And you know, I think it really also just depends, again, on what the students are expecting there. So I don't have a clear win one way or the other. But what I will say to Alex's point is just having those videos available as a resource is always useful, because once you know it's there, you can go back and link, you know, more easily. And so even if you're doing a live lecture, I would always try and record it at least. And
the incredible power of that recording of how to do something, which is what I kind of stumbled into teaching a class on visual effects, you know, for kids, you know, they're 8 to 12-year-olds, was that the slower kids could rewind and watch it over and over again because they didn't get something, and the faster kids could watch it at 2x, you know, and it was an amazing, like, to watch them progress through that. The faster kids were like, when they weren't bored, and the slower kids could go back and grab onto the things that they wanted. And if you give them a long enough time that both of them have time to do both, then you end up with then you come back to the live portion. What's missing with LinkedIn Live and with all these trainings is that live portion, in my opinion, which is it allows us to fill in all the gaps that weren't covered. It also creates to Michael's point, it creates a certain level of energy that this is, you know, I have a deadline in which we're going to discuss it. And if I want to learn, I'm going to watch all these videos before I get to that Q&A. And there is something about the live portion that is super important for that. Go to Emily and then Kent, and then back to Michael.
I was just going to say, I was asked by a district to provide training next week on having synchronous live classes for the students at home. And I was really against it when they asked me to do it. I thought it was really unfair to put that on the teachers to do. But when looking at it from the fully remote students' point of view, and this is K-12, so it's obviously not to Kent's question exactly, but the kids that are choosing to be fully remote are only seeing the teacher 1 day out of 5. And in our districts, currently the way it's set up, and they get them for like an hour. For elementary, they get them for 2 to 2.5 hours. For their high school level classes, they get them from 20 to 40 minutes. And so those kids are at a disadvantage because everything else they're doing is asynchronous and may not have a video. It may be just do this reading and answer these questions. And that's what they're doing all week until Friday when they get to meet with the teacher. So when we were talking about doing it synchronously, what we were looking at is how can we pull those kids in, a couple of times a week and be there for the, mini lesson and some of the practice and then leave so that they're not on a Zoom meeting from 7:30 in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon, but still get some quality FaceTime with the teachers to ask their questions. And the flipped classroom keeps coming back. Like that idea of do the pre-work, you're in high school, do the pre-work, we'll talk about it as a class and do more higher level meaningful tasks in person. And then
it's never been more relevant. We've been talking about this for 20 years, but it's never been more relevant.
Yeah. But but that whole other thing is that the research that is out there that I've been reading, there isn't a lot of it, obviously, because this hasn't, distance learning is different than what we're doing right now. The emergency remote learning is completely different. This is not someone planning for fully distant learning. But that quality level and not giving teachers a prep period for their remote kids. Like you get a prep period for, each period that you teach, not for each period, each class that you teach. So if you teach 5 classes, you might have 2 or 3 preps to prepare for those classes over the course of the week. But then there's no time to build that stuff that they want you to build. And I think that that's kind of where we fell down with the scheduling for remote and hybrid, is that we didn't build in like, okay, the teacher's going to need an extra hour just to focus on how to make this work.
And here's the question at this point that one has to answer is, should that be the teacher? Like, should that be the teacher, or should school districts be building, media teams that are building these for the teachers? The teachers come to them with sketches of what they need. Like, I need this for my, because here's the thing is that you've got, how many, like, I don't know if you know this, Millie, but how many physics teachers do you have in all the districts that you work with? I don't know what that number is, probably hundreds of them, right?
Oh, physics teachers or just
physics teachers. Physics teachers
alone, there's probably 12.
Okay, so it's 12 in the groups, but they're dealing with their own students. They have shared needs. So the thing is that the physics teachers have shared needs, and there's 40,000 physics teachers around the United States. They're not doing 40,000 different things, but they're doing 40,000 different animations badly. Like the thing is a centralized resource where, let's say, physics teachers could say, vote on, we want, like, if you had a centralized media center that the education system put together, that teachers could sit there and request those things, and let's say vote them up. Like, these are the most important things that we think we need as teachers. Now you have 20,000 votes for momentum. Like, we need an animation, and they've got ideas, and maybe even someone sketched something up that this is kind of what I need. When you build that animation from momentum, we haven't taught momentum very differently for decades. Like that's evergreen content, or Pythagorean theorem, or those other things. You're solving that. Those teachers are still out there teaching to, their classes, but you've now solved that problem of making that video or that animation for 1,000 teachers, where they have resources that might be a federal resource that's just like, this is all the things that you need for those things, and it's free for you to use. It's just there, and I think that could be something that could be really interesting as far as solving these problems. And the more I listen to everyone talk about it, and the teachers kind of struggling with this, the more I think what you need is media professionals who are being asked by the teachers what to do, and teachers might send them some chicken scratches of what they want, and then something gets made, and then teachers will give a bunch of comments, and something new gets made. But it's iterating, and when it iterates for everybody as an available resource. And at the beginning, it won't be enough for everyone. But if you had, literally at this point, if you think of it as a stimulus project, you could have thousands of animators at home, building stuff for teachers, and you could produce a lot of content really fast that would solve a lot of problems very, very quickly. Maybe not perfectly, but better than the teachers would in their copious free time. For the 20 minutes that they have to do the animation, you'll probably do something better with someone who actually knows how to use motion and 3D and everything else. Chris, and then Michael, and then Kent, and then Tony.
I see a tremendous opportunity here for teacher educators to jump up. We have 2,500 colleges and universities that have teacher preparation programs, some large, some small. And those students, tens of thousands of students who want to be teachers, are probably more tech savvy than many of the veteran teachers are. Let's rethink the model. Instead of one teacher per classroom or per course, let's say it's a team. It's a small team of a college student who wants to be a teacher and who and can be the producer of the teacher's video, live stream, and or recordings, and they're in a conversation with one another, which could happen remotely, and enhance both their learning experiences and produce better quality content, better lighting, better everything.
And even the students that are in high school, or the students that are even the grade school students, in some cases, you know, incorporating the students more into responsibility positions to become part of that team. They are very technically capable of doing that, you know, and probably more technically capable in some ways. And I think that we don't take full advantage of, you know, of all the resources that we have. To your point, college resources, but also high school resources, grade school resources, having certain students who are really interested in that. Like for me, it was always easier. If you want me to, like, it was easier for me to go to an event like a seminar or a service or whatever, if I'm working on it. Like getting me to show up and sit down was almost impossible, but getting me to show up and do all the cameras and audio from the time I was like 12 years old was easy. You know, I'd always show up for that, and I learned just as much out of it, but I had to be doing something related to it, not just sitting there. Go ahead, Kent. And we're going to run out of time soon, but we'll go through a couple more questions. Go ahead.
I think Alex's point about making videos, I think that's going to be the academic writing of the future. That, you know, we spend a lot of times teaching people how to do research writing. Nobody wants to read a research paper. Like I don't want to. I assign them, and I don't want to read them. I would much rather watch a video, and I'm starting to do that more, is to have students develop that skill of making, you know, in the grammar, I guess a video would be light and sound, right? And so you have to learn how to do that well to get your message across. Is it compelling? And so I think kind of what Chris is saying, that's a skill that we need to teach them. And, you know, sort of this idea of asynchronous, I won't have a class on Zoom unless I can very specifically state the students need to be here for these reasons, you know, and if I don't have to have them there for those reasons, I'm just putting a video up and saying, watch it and take a quiz over it or something. So we need to be intentional. Why are the students there? Because they don't, I mean, we've all been in meetings that we don't want to be at. It's like they could have just sent an email with that information. Why did I come here for this? You know, and I think our students are, more than anything, they're tired. They don't want to be, if there's no reason for them to be there, why are we making them come? And I think we as professors need to be really intentional. Don't have them come to a meeting unless there's a good reason for them to be there.
And I think that in general, academic areas, this is the academics in general, and also in other areas, need to respect time more often. You know, I think that we just plow people into it and just like, we're just going to make you do a whole bunch of busy work. And because it's the way we used to do it, and you're getting your, you know, whatever, you're earning your stripes or whatever. But it really, you know, kids all the way up now are becoming more and more, I think that they're becoming more and more stingy about time, because they fill their time up with so many things that they're like, okay, really, like, get to the point, you know, like really get to the point on what we're doing here. You know, because it's just, people walk around the house 4 times and then go in through the front door. Michael, and then Tony.
Yeah, I think in terms of time, there's now been a few things going on, but you know, it is worth mentioning that watching a video before class is additional time that gets spent as well. So if you're doing that, you should intentionally schedule that in. I think the other advantage that thinking about where you would do things live as well is there's a lot of value in students, especially if you are demoing a process, for students to see you make a mistake and figure out how to respond to that. Especially teaching computer science, the biggest thing that I actually see, and this kind of goes to one of those things about videos versus reading though, is that students really don't like reading. And there are things where, because you have content like an error message that is generated back at you that you do need to read, you know, seeing someone go through that live and work that process is really valuable, and it's something that I think that that organic nature. It's hard to call it energy because it's kind of a weird thing to happen, but is really valuable. I do think with the videos, and just like the communication thing, there is something worth telling students how you're supposed to learn content, because I like learning from videos, but I find them to be very terrible reference material.
Yep.
Unless they are properly chaptered and indexed and captioned, which, let's be honest, like 98% of videos are not. And so I think that there's just that thing as well when we're building resources for students, because if watching something once makes a lot of sense, I like listening to a research talk over reading the paper. But when I have a question that I need answered, that needs to be in some form as well, that exists somewhere.
And what I used to do with a lot of my training, and what I've seen Heston do with their cooking, when we keep on talking about it, is there's a step with text that I can refer to. If I don't understand it, I hit the button and I watch the video. Mm-hmm. But I don't have to watch every video, and I don't have to watch through the whole video to get to what I need to know. There's something I can scan, and if it still doesn't make sense, I can click on it and watch it. And that's from my perspective, mixing those two things up together. But yeah, I think that it's not a matter of doing video training, which I think the problem with video training is that they just made it all video training. Mm-hmm. It's how do we explore all of the different forms of communication, and how do we use all of them in every class? I think the challenge that we have to kind of figure out. Go ahead, Tony, and then Roscoe.
First thing I want to say is that, Alex, thank you so much for doing this. And I know I say it often, but I think it bears repeating. I'm going to say a couple of things. And first, I want to say that what I taught was high school special education autism. And when I was teaching, my primary tool in the classroom was all of the normal manipulatives, but we also integrated an iPad for all of the students. We had them in very sturdy cases, and so I had low functioning high school students, and the tools, the apps that Apple made available for the special education students was fantastic. Having said that, I want to say that I think that visual learning was extremely effective for those students. But I also want to say that I think that is effective for any student. Yeah. And so I think that's I think we need to push toward making what's already been said, the visual learning and the conversation learning integrated effectively. And we are doing a fantastic job here having that conversation. How do we get this conversation to the people who may be listening and may not be listening to make the changes that need to be made? Because there are some students who, we've talked about this before, that are literally going down the drain because they're not getting what they need. And so my focus right now is we're having great conversations here. And I guess I can say this because I'm not getting paid by anybody and I'm not employed at this time because I'm retired. So I can say this. We need to find a way to get what we're talking about here to the people, because from my vantage point, it seems as if they're forcing these children to go to school because of greed. It's all about money and what we said before about children being in seats so that everybody can be paid. And they don't care about learning or their safety. And so how do we get what we're talking about here to do we need to write to congressmen? What do we need to do to make the shift, to make this paradigm shift?
I mean, what I would say in the organic way that I kind of approach things is invite more people to the Saturday morning session. We have it here on Saturday morning. It is, having more educators and more administrators, and they're not all going to like it. They're not all going to come. But the thing is that, teachers inviting other teachers and other administrators and other things into this conversation, like right now, this is my favorite conversation. So we have it every Saturday morning. I love hanging out with all of you, and I love talking about this because it's the thing I'm most passionate about, but it's the lowest viewed thing that we do, so it's the least popular thing that we do. And I do it every week because we have such a great panel and it's such a great conversation, and I'm inspired by it every single time I talk to you about it. And so I know that there's a thing there. So what we have to do though, is if this morning session turned into 500 or 1,000 or 2,000. What happens is that different people are going to percolate in different ways. We have administrators here. We have people who are talking that represent lots of teachers, that represent lots of those things. And that chain reaction of this conversation, can percolate in odd places, right? And we have to be patient because it's a huge, it's a giant machine that we're trying to turn around. And the things that we're turning around, I think, are evergreen. I think these are problems that are going to occur for the next decade, not just because of COVID. I think that it's brought up that we need to rethink the way we're teaching, at all together. I've been talking about that for a long time. But I think that we do, to your point, we need to figure that out. But I think that to me, the first step, I don't think writing to our congressman is necessarily going to make as much of a difference as gathering more and more people into this conversation that we're having on Saturday mornings and having them take away what, some of them will ignore it. Some of them will only come for 10 minutes. Doesn't matter. It's the, kind of the sower's, the sower's parable of you just throw out a lot of seeds, you get a lot, and some of it's going to show up and some of it's not, and so the main thing is getting out to a lot of different people and having them come at least look at the conversation here. And then you're going to attract the ones that are that it calls to. And those ones, then the hope is that those ones then share it with the folks that they think would be interested, and those share it with theirs. But if this grew into 1,000 teachers showing up every Saturday morning, a lot of things would change really fast. Like 1,000 teachers and 1,000 administrators would represent, how many school districts and how many other things, because what would happen is what we're talking about here would be resonating in a wider, it already is. I mean, we have school districts here that are doing different things based on our conversation. So it's already resonating in small forms, but it would resonate in large forms if the numbers are bigger. And so it's just a matter of sharing it, and talking about it and having it there. But that's all up to all of you. My job is to keep holding the space and for the panelists, keep having them continue to do that. And it's my pleasure to do it. And so it's, but we have to, keep sharing it with other people and say that it's there. Go ahead, Roscoe, and then Bill, and I have to go to work soon.
Okay. I was going to say, my original thing has to do with time, but keep offering hope based on the questions or Tony's comment. Keep offering hope. And if you see that the education system is wounded, keep pulling the scab off, and eventually the infection will set in and take over the education system. My original comment was in regards to time. My students love the fact that when there's a class that is designed that they don't, I'm at a commuter school, when they don't have to drive to get to class, they love it absolutely. So that's also a good thing to keep presenting to college students, is give them an opportunity to just stay where they're at. Yeah. And the transition to the next final question is simple. Yeah. We've been having an offline discussion about basic systems for teachers to use.
Absolutely. Bill?
Well, I just wanted to note that just forgive yourself. If you're trying to do content, forgive yourself during the learning process, because it is a bit complex. I used to teach a lot for Video Maker in seminars around the country, and I used to break down just the average video into 5 kind of pods. There's the whole pre-production thing. There's the 3 kind of technical areas, camera work, sound recording, and cinematography, sound recording, and lighting. So those require a good little bit of expertise to understand, to get really good results. And then there's post-production. And I used to say often, people spend their entire careers trying to be excellent in any one of those areas and a lot of the sub areas inside of that. So as you are taking on these skills and trying to learn to do better so you can create your own classroom, just be kind to yourself, forgive yourself for your mistakes, and just try to incrementally learn to do a little better each time.
And what I'll keep on saying, what every teacher that I talk to that asks me what should I do next is get a good microphone and get good at Keynote, PowerPoint, or slides, depending on what your platform is. Just get good at those, doing them well. And I will say that that's the order in which they are of quality. Keynote is by far better than PowerPoint. PowerPoint is by far better than slides. The only thing slides adds is the stuff that Emily does, which is all the interaction and interactives that it can add to. But learning those and having a good microphone so that you sound good, that's a $30 investment, will make a huge difference in you sending out things that are actually interesting to watch. Go ahead, Trevor.
So I want to hit, it's kind of away from the question, but on the reopening schools. So I am one of the people making that decision. And for me, it's not about money. A lot of the conversation we have here, I think, is focusing on your kind of your bell curve to your top performer students, the ones that are going to show up, they're going to be engaged. For us, we have a number of students that are not those students. So we have AEJuice students with difficult backgrounds. We have a hard time getting them to show up at all. So when we have school, we have a bus in front of their house, getting them to show up and arrive. Over a digital format, trying to keep them engaged, they don't want to be there. When they are stuck in the class, it's a lot easier to maintain control of the student, keep them focused, give them that additional support. Because to some extent, if they're just stuck there, they kind of have to try and at least absorb a little bit. They might not do a lot, even if they're against it, but they're still going to absorb something. We also have elementary kids. The little kids are basically illiterate. You can't reach out over Zoom and put your hand over a kid's hand and say, okay, this is how you make that arc for a letter. And it's very hard, and not many parents either A, don't have the time, or B, frankly, aren't involved enough to sit down and do that. That's that skill, that part of homework and family is lost to this generation. And the last group for us is special education. We have some students who simply can't be on a computer effectively yet. They might even be in high school. So for us, we're looking at still slowly bringing some of these groups back, because that's the only way they can get education. Otherwise, these students are gone. They are lost. They are gaining nothing right now. And at the moment, the gap year idea, I love the idea of just, it's a pass. Let's teach logic and just help those that we can, and then just restart next year. But that's not going to happen. For here in California, that's never going to happen. We have to try and figure out ways to reach these students. The only way we can do that is by trying to figure out ways to come back to school safely. And that is where you have to do some of these the temperature checks, the extra equipment, the plexiglass, all that stupid junk that hopefully a year from now we all throw away, and it's just garbage. It's the most money we've wasted in our lifetime. But I don't really see it as wasted, because we do need to try and figure out how to capture those students. Because we can keep helping that bell curve, but that center of the bell curve. But at some point, at least for me, I want to help the other students, the ones that really need that 100%.
I would argue that the issue, though, is I agree with you. I would argue that the issue is that we should spend all of the on-site resources supporting the students that absolutely need to be on-site, for those things, and none of the resources to bring in healthy, middle of the bell curve or above the bell curve students back into classes. It is like, we need to spend, to your point, we need to spend all that energy. If they need to be in the classroom, for instance, my son is a good example. I have to spend a lot of Thanksgiving trying to get him to catch up. He just completely, and he is like top of his class before COVID, and now has got straight D's and F's because he just won't play. Like, he just won't interact with it. So I have to work on pulling him back to the surface. So I'm very clear of the issues. And one of the things I don't know if people are interested in, I talked to my kids about it, whether they'd be willing to. Would it be interesting for this group to interview my kids? Like, to bring them on? We could bring a couple kids on it. It could be other people if they're other interested, but I think it would be interesting to hear, and my kids could be some of them. We could bring in other kids that are interested. If other people have kids that they want to do that could come in and just, we can interview them and ask them what's working and not working. Because my kids are pretty articulate about what's working and not working. But if people are interested in that, let me know if that seems like a good idea. I have to go. We're going to jump to the next question because I have to finish. I have to go to work. Next question.
Trevor Walker of Rosamond, California says, what's the minimal setup I can get administration and support staff to make them look more professional? I was looking at the Brio you mentioned here often, and just the monoprice gaming earphones with a mic so that it's low profile and stops them from using their speakers.
Yep, go ahead, Trevor.
So to build on this, I saw, and I won't say who it was, I'm in a lot of state level meetings, and we had a deputy director of something very important. And it was the most abysmal Zoom call. The colors were changing, the thing was moving. Every time he talked, the whole thing shook. You couldn't hear him. And I'm like, this person probably makes $300,000 a year.
Yeah.
And they can't.
Well, I watched all these. I had the pleasure to watch lots and lots and lots of politicians do stuff over the fall. And you're like, all you have is your camera and you can't figure this out. Like, what is going on? So, the hierarchy that we always get into is your internet connection has to work. You have to have a wired internet connection that is at least 5 megs a second up, preferably 10. That is the number one thing. No Wi-Fi. I'm on Wi-Fi right now. You probably have seen stalls throughout this thing because I'm in a hotel. So you see stalls constantly because of that. The next thing you fix is audio, whether it's a Pulson mic or a Pile mic with a small converter. It's an 1/8 inch non-Sennheiser 1/8 inch jack into a 1/8 inch to USB converter. It cleans up most of the audio. Like it just kind of solves a lot of that audio. The next thing after that is generally, so you first solve the internet, then you solve the mic, then you solve lighting, because lighting will fix most of the problems with your webcam. Preferably your webcam is not on the same table as your hands are. It's on a tripod or something that's mounted right off that's not on a table, because that's what you're seeing with all the shaking. Then you move to, so you have lighting. I have two, right now I'm testing. So I have 2 big NAN lights, NAN light 100Bs, but you can get smaller 25 LumaPads. They're a lot less expensive, that work really well as well. But you can get, and Tony's using some $40 newer lights, which are working great as well. But some lighting, I like to have a little bit of lighting on both sides to kind of not make it. I didn't have that for the first couple days here. The webcam, a Brio, if you can afford it, 920 is great as well. We don't really use anything else. I mean, to be honest, webcams, there's 920s and there's Brios. They're hard to get. So you have to order them ahead of time or order them from South Africa, which is poor Hosmuk. We keep on asking him, like, can you order another 50 or 25 or 10, webcams? But 920s and Brios are the right. We haven't found anything else that's really that competitive with those. The advantage of the Brios, if you are doing a higher level event, is that you can pan and scan inside of the Brio from the other side if you're doing a Zoom. So you can actually bring them in and get into their camera and pull it together, I think. And so, and then, after that is backgrounds. I'm in a hotel and I decided not to bring my gray background down, but I really recommend that unless you brand something or whatever, if one of the things that if I was spending stimulus money next year, I would give every student and every teacher a background. It could be a school background. It could be school colors. It could be whatever it is. Stop with the virtual. The virtual is an abomination. It is an abomination. It makes everyone look stupid, and it just, and the problem is it's something used to make them feel, so they don't have to show their background. So there's privacy issues for students. There's privacy issues for teachers. I understand why you do that from a privacy perspective, but you look stupid, like when you use virtual backgrounds and it's this weird little whatever, and it always looks stupid, I think that just getting a gray background, what we've standardized in our company, if you work for our company, you're in meetings, client-facing meetings, you get a Lazalite 6x7 foot screen, which we expect you to put behind you. Everybody, and we just had a client look at it and go, wow, you guys look great. Like, got all these gray screens and it all just kind of like when you see a bunch of us in one meeting, you see all these gray backgrounds and all this stuff, and it's quite nice. It's quite pleasing. So, but I think standardizing the backgrounds and not making people figure out how to do virtual backgrounds and not having all of that stuff there. Those are the things that, we prep at least 50 people a month where we send out kits. What I'm giving you is what we send, this is the small end of what we send out. We're spending $400 to $600 a unit, $600 if we're sending the background. Otherwise, it's about $400 a unit for a LumaPad and the inexpensive mic, a Brio, you know, earpiece, which we're just using auto earpieces, but you can use, you know, have a variety of different things. But, and it just, everyone thinks that our events look a lot better, you know, just across the board. And we won't work with you at this point. We're busy enough that if someone comes and says we want to do an event and they don't want to prep us to send prep gear to the seekers, we decline the event, you know, because it's just, I know it's just going to be another one of the things that you just saw, you know, and I don't want to have my brand near that, you know, and so those are the things that I would recommend as far as what you can send out, and you just have to ratchet up. The most important purchase is the audio. A headset mic with a converter fixes a huge amount. Zoom, I truly believe, we were talking about this in the 6 o'clock hour, I truly believe that Zoom, quote unquote, Zoom fatigue is from virtual backgrounds, bad lighting, and bad mics. You know, like it's because our brain is having to process all this stuff that doesn't work. And it's just sitting there going, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. And we're just ignoring it. And it just wears us down because our lower brain is going, this is really messed up. Like this, I think I've been poisoned. You know, like I'm seeing things that shouldn't be there. And our upper brain is saying, ignore that, ignore that, ignore that. So there's all these calls going back between the brain, and you get tired. You know, and because, you know, look, our average time is very long in this event because we've moved away from most of those things. Michael and Emily, real quick.
Yeah, two things, especially related to fatigue, is that on audio, you won't hear people that often notice when your audio is either better or worse until you ask them. But when they do say something, they definitely notice.
And I will say it's not just the notice, it's not what they notice, it's how they feel.
Yeah. But like in my case, I mean, I spent a ridiculous amount of money on my setup, mostly because of this group. But
we're an expensive friends.
I mean, I love it. I was going to spend money on cameras anyway, so why not? But you know, when you talk to people, they can tell that it does make a difference. The other thing about Zoom fatigue that's been interesting, this hasn't really been super validated yet, but everyone really loves gallery view in Zoom. But one of the things that it sort of creates that perception of being watched, and it's not perfect because Zoom has this sort of active speaker that it tries to hang on to. But there's been a lot of reports of switching to active speaker view where you only see one person at once. And a lot of people find that less tiring, but it is a little bit of a personal thing and how much you notice yourself. But it's something worth trying.
As a moderator, I find I'm blind if I can't see everybody. You know, like you know, because I'm waiting for that. That's the hardest part for me. Emily?
So just back to Trevor, the minimal setup also have a ruthless review of each one, because I can't tell you how many people I have so much less respect for because they don't know how to use presentation mode when they're presenting a power slide deck and I have to watch their slides go down the side of the screen. Or their lighting is terrible and like they don't know that it's not bad. Like I went to a Board of Ed meeting the other day and I had to leave because I couldn't stand the jittery dark screen of most of the Board of Ed members who are all zooming in from their houses. So like a 5-minute like, hey, let's meet, let me give you some pointers, and like just even if it's a video for them to watch, like the one that Jeff made for us. Yeah, Jeff Francis made for us. And like something like that, as simple as that, giving that in addition to the right tools is, I think, invaluable, because today I didn't have time to put my screen over and it's like right here. And I feel like so naked. I'm like, I got to move this. Like, it's like, I feel awkward and weird. But at the same time, like, I lose respect for people who are more educated, more qualified than me at something because they do a terrible presentation. And then I'm just like, I'm not listening to you because you don't even know how to put your stuff into presentation mode.
And I can't tell you how many people were told when we're trying to prep them, when we send them out a kit and they don't want to use it, is, I do this all the time. I understand this. I do this all the time. I do this all the time. I'm like, you keep saying that. You keep saying that. You keep saying that. You know, and it's like, and we just listen through it because, and I've talked about this before, educators, engineers, you know, in like high level administration is the hardest for us to work with. When we see a long list of people like that, because they're full of what they know, and it's really hard to get anything else in there, you know, and so it's not here, but when we see a long list of that, when we're prepping of an event, we know that it's going to be a long road uphill with rocks and people throwing things at us, like to get the event out the other end. Chris, real quick, and then I'm already late for my next thing.
I just want to say that working with faculty is always every dean's biggest complaint.
Yeah.
This isn't going to work. I used to be a faculty member, but now that I'm a dean, all faculty are crazy.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much to everyone who came and hung out with us today.
Thanks, Alex.
Such a great panel that always comes and coalesces here. Really love all of the perspectives, and the fact that not all of the perspectives come from the same place, and we don't all agree. And I think that's the best part, is that we can all agree to disagree, and we all get to see the point of view from the other sides. Is part of what makes this special. So anyway, thank you all, and we will see you all tomorrow, or some of you tomorrow, for our Sunday kind of relaxed chat.